This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority.
Can I welcome everyone to the Police and Crime Committee meeting. This morning we will be holding our monthly question and answer session with the Mayor's Office for Policing and Crime. Sadly, we have no police officers here today, again. Please make sure that your electronic devices are switched to silent mode to avoid any interruptions. Can I now ask our clerk, Lauren Harvey, if any apologies have been received?
Thank you. Today we've received apologies from the Chair, Assembly Member Ahmad, and therefore we have the Deputy Chairman in the Chair today. And we've also received apologies from Assembly Member Cooper, for whom Assembly Member Harani is attending as a substitute.
Thank you. Thank you, Lauren. Can I ask the committee to note the recommendations set out at item 2 and ask if members have any other interest to declare? Thank you. Can we note the outstanding actions arising from previous meetings of the committee? Thank you. Can we now move on to our main item of business? And I'd like to welcome our guests, Kaya Comas-Schwartz, Deputy Mayor for Policing and Crime, and Kenny Bowie, Director of Strategy and MPS Oversight from the Mayor's Office for Policing and Crime, commonly known as MOPAC. Now, I believe the chairman has asked for an update on policing of the protests last weekend. Is that correct? Okay, if you'd like to give us that update.
Thank you. I'm very grateful to the Metropolitan Police for their continued hard work policing high volumes of protest activity we continue to see in London, allowing Londoners to express their democratic right to free speech while also keeping people safe. The Metropolitan Police this weekend served several major sporting events, cultural events, alongside well in excess of 150 protests this summer, which the Commissioner regularly briefs myself and the Mayor on. This included this weekend where we saw the former BNP member Stephen Yaxley-Lennon organise a protest on behalf of Unite the Kingdom. While most of the protesters were peaceful, some projectiles were thrown and 26 officers were injured, which I'm sure the members will agree with me is completely unacceptable. We cannot stand for assault on police officers doing their job and for people feeling intimidated on our streets because of their faith, background or colour of their skin. I know that many Londoners may have felt worried about the events this weekend, but the Mayor has been clear that London will always stand up for the British values of equality, inclusion and mutual respect. The broader demand on the Metropolitan Police protesting major events is continuing, with over 20 events taking place this weekend, including, of course, today with the state visit of President Trump. We continue to support the Mayor investing over £1.1 billion from City Hall this year and making the case to government so that the Met gets the funding it needs. This includes the National and International Capital Cities grant, which the government provided a much-needed funding boost to this year after years of underfunding from previous governments. This 30% boost was the largest increase in over a decade and equated to over £63 million extra for the MPS. However, a gap still remains and we continue to make the case to government for the Met to receive its fair share of funding from the NIC. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Some of this is alarming, and I've been reading about some of the actions of protesters from a Metropolitan Police commander, and she noted, in carrying out their duties today, our officers have been punched, kicked, spat on, and had objects thrown at them by protesters. She described the treatment as intolerable. Would you agree, as I do, about the abhorrent treatment of police officers at protests?
Completely, Chair. I think it's really, I mean, one of the things that really struck me from the reports I read is that a police officer some of them lost their teeth in dealing with protesters, and that's in their line of duty to keep people safe in those protests. So I completely agree with you, Chair. It's unacceptable. You will have seen in the media today appeals for information on some of the people that the police are investigating. So there'll be continued investigation as to some of the actions that happened there. Absolutely.
But just to clarify, if I may, the words that I've just read to you were in relation to the protests on the 7th of September 2025, with the 893 arrests of Palestinian Action supporters, where 17 people were arrested, for assaults on police officers. Where is everybody's condemnation of the actions of the protesters then?
I will repeat, Chair, that I will always condemn violence against police officers. It's unacceptable. None of us should accept abuse at work, and that goes very much forward to the people that are trying to protect people in their democratic right to protest.
Absolutely right. And I think that they deserve not to be called far right. The majority of the people that were out there at the weekend are certainly not far right. Most of them aren't political in any which way. They're just fed up with this government. I've just read you out what happened the week before And I say to you, where's the condemnation of that? There isn't any. The minute anybody from the right of the spectrum, if anybody thinks that they are, and suddenly there's all this condemnation, which is right. No police officer should ever be attacked, whatever the demonstration. Or if you look at the Carnival, somebody had his nose broken there as well. That should never, ever happen. But I do get a little vexed when I read you out something. You did assume it was from the weekend, but it wasn't. It was from these Palestinian Action supporters who are quite dreadful. You've only got to look at the data.
I repeat, Chair, that I condemn all violence towards police officers in any circumstances. It's really important, as I said, to note that the majority of people at the weekend were acting in their democratic rights to protest and assemble, and did so peacefully. However, we must make sure that always, consistently, that the police are able to do their work without fear or favour, and that includes without violence.
Yeah, and I think politicians should treat all of this when they're injured in the same way. I've been given the list. Assembly Member Small Edwards.
Thank you, Chair, and good morning. Live facial recognition was recently used at Notting Hill Carnival, but wasn't used at the weekend's Unite the Kingdom protests. Can I just ask why there was this difference in approach to this event this weekend versus Carnival when it comes to live facial recognition?
Thank you. Yes, so I think it's important to first say that obviously the policing of all protests and all events are purely operational, and they must be operational and have operational independence. Also, I know we're going to talk about Notting Hill Carnival later, but to address your point, I think all of us have wanted to make sure that the success of Carnival, which is a carnival that has been taking place in London and is the second biggest carnival outside of Rio, so it's an internationally renowned event, can happen as safely as possible. I was grateful to AC Matt Ward for his briefing to me before the Carnival about the steps that they were taking to ensure this one of the safest carnivals ever, and I think we should note that success. One of the tactics they used, amongst many, and I think that that's important, is the deployment of LFR. There were several community engagement sessions ahead of that to make sure that any community concerns about the use of LFR were used. Also, it's important to note that it wasn't within the Carnival footprint. It was on the perimeters near the two nearest stations, and also that this year the Mayor and the local councils invested significant amounts of funding to make sure that there were additional stewards. This is something that we've been concerned about.
We're coming on to the Carnival, as you know, a bit later, but
sure.
Thank you.
But to go back to your question about the deployment of it here in comparison to the protest this weekend, so far, the LFR is a relatively new tactic. It's been piloted across the year and has been growing its evidence base. It hasn't yet been used in protest, but the Commissioner said yesterday that it's something that they're keen to look at, but it must be on an evidence base and must be appropriate, as I said, as all protests are organised individually in their own circumstance.
But given the organiser of the march at the weekend has convictions for assault, fraud, contempt of court, stalking, can you see why many Londoners might feel there's a double standard if live facial recognition is deployed at Carnival but not deployed at an event organised by someone with that many convictions?
Whilst I think, you know, what you've read out about Stephen and Yexley Leonard is significantly concerning, and I know the police have had several arrests about that person. I think that still doesn't mean that the organiser of the protest is the whole picture. We have to think that every weekend now, pretty much, there's protests happening across London on various issues, and the police must have operational independence on how they feel best to do those organisation of those protests. As I've said previously, so far, LFR hasn't been used at any protests. We know that whilst Carnival has its roots in protest, it is not a protest, it's an international event. It has been used at other international events like I believe the coronation and other sporting events, and that evidence base is being looked at.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. I'll just quote you because none of us were there, because this is the London Policing Board, which all of us are so fed up with. Yesterday, apparently, as Sir Mark Rowley noted regarding Notting Hill Carnival, that, and I'm quoting, there's a clear intelligence picture of violence for many years, and what we see going to the event, i.e. Notting Hill Carnival, creates the grounds that there are dangerous people that are going to undermine the event for the majority. That is a very clear intelligence basis to deploy live facial recognition. And that's why he did that. This is why it is not helpful having a London Policing Board, because things are said at that we don't hear here. And if we had a senior police officer here, he would have said it. Instead of that, he said it yesterday. And thankfully, I've got somebody in my staff that it looked through the whole thing. Assembly Member Roberts.
Thank you, Chair, and good morning. Yes, touching on the Commissioner's comments regarding the clear intelligence picture. He also claimed that there wasn't the intelligence base for a more proactive and asserting policing strategy in advance of the protests that we saw. I mean, we've heard that the organiser is a known and convicted criminal, not just petty theft, violence, the worst sorts of crime. Many of the guest speakers who were known in advance have a history of inciting hatred, either basic hatred or racial hatred. We know that there have been protests up and down the country outside hotels which have descended into violence. We saw the riots on the streets of this country just last year. And the likelihood is that many, not all, but many, of those attending the Unite the Kingdom march on Saturday would have been involved in previous violent activities, whether it was the hotel protests or whether it was the riots of last year. So given that there is either a direct evidence base or a supposition base, which is what is used for the Notting Hill Carnival, should the Commissioner change the strategy? Should there be another march organised by the same organisation in the future, given what we now know definitely happened, given what we know has happened with some of the speakers, and given what was a very clear likelihood of other violent people coming to the capital?
Thank you, Assembly Member Roberts. That would have to be an operational decision. Obviously, as I've previously said, each protest...
If I may ask what your view is.
My view?
Yes.
On whether it should be used?
Yes.
I think it's difficult to give a view on, and this is why I'm saying it has to be an operational...
That's why you're the very highly paid Deputy Mayor for Police and Crime.
Sorry, did you want
to
me
have
to
a view?
answer?
Yes,
yes,
I do.
I'm happy to
prefer an answer rather than obfuscation.
I'm very happy to let you speak, to answer your question with my view. We regularly, obviously, discuss and scrutinise public order, and the importance of every public order and protest being organised on its merits. We know in London, from the evidence and the surveillance and the communication with organisers for events, pre-event, that every protest needs to be taken on its individual merits because of the complexity of each one. And also in the capital city, which is why we're pressing so hard with the Home Office on the NIC, the multitude of things that can be happening across the city at one time. And therefore, I think it's important. I know that the Commissioner says he's keen to look at whether LFR should be deployed at protests going forward, and that's something that I know he's considering, but the operational independence around public order must be protected given the complexity of those operations. It would be wrong for me to prejudice whether I think tactics should or shouldn't be used at public order protests.
Sorry, I gave you an ample opportunity to answer the question because you gave the impression that you were going to give a view. So far, you have not. Is it your view?
I have. I've given my view that I think the operational independence on public order is very important because of the complexity of those protests and their individual nuances and constraints and the other things that are going on in that city, at the city at that time. I know that the Commissioner has said that he's interested in looking at whether LFR should be deployed, but also we know from the deployment of LFR so far that they need to, be considered, those deployments individually for what they do. So it'd be wrong for me to say whether a tactic is appropriate on a hypothetical protest that hasn't been organised or constructed.
You'll appreciate that there's a degree of frustration that whenever there's something positive happening within the Metropolitan Police, whether it's new officers or new facilities or a new groundbreaking initiative, that it's very often the Mayor and Deputy Mayor coming forward and saying, this is what we're doing. Whenever there's something which you don't want to touch, it's an operational matter and you don't want to comment. But thank you very much, Chair. No further.
Thank you. And that's why we need somebody operational here. And you as Deputy Mayor should be telling the Mayor this, because this is becoming totally unacceptable for this committee.
Sorry, can I clarify that I believe that a police officer is coming to the October meeting? Is that?
Oh, that's all right then. No.
Sorry, is that not your understanding?
It was my understanding for a while. We thought somebody was coming to this one. We need operational officers at these meetings. We've said so before. We're all in agreement on that, and getting us all to agree on anything is pretty good, but we're all in agreement on that. We need, so that you can't just say this is an operational view, you'll have somebody sitting next to you that is operational, and we can ask them. We can't. You can at the London Policing Board because, my God, it was the whole top ranking of the police that were here yesterday. That is unacceptable, and please take that message back to your Mayor because this is unacceptable. We need police officers at this meeting. We do not need the London Policing Board. Assembly Member Lord Bailey.
Good morning, Deputy Mayor. Just to hammer home the point that the Chair is making, we are elected to ask these questions. They were selected. That's why they are often referred to as the Mayor's mates. Whereas we have been elected by Londoners to ask said questions. And if you had someone here, they would be able to answer the questions that we're putting to you, because I do accept some of them are not for you to answer. I just want to make a point. You were very correct in your condemnation of the attacking of police, and you tried to be even-handed. But where you weren't even-handed is that you named Unite the Country, but you didn't name Palestine Action. So, and the reason I bring this up to you, because many Londoners, I've been written to now a number of times, are complaining that your office and the Mayor, by extension, are not even-handed in these things. Would you agree that they are correct?
No, as I said repeatedly, I think that it's really important that the Metropolitan Police are supported to ensure that the democratic right to protest is enabled in the city, and that they're able to do those operations without fear and favour, and that no police officer in their line of work should have to face violence or intimidation because of that. I'm very clear in that. Agreed.
But would you care to name and condemn the behaviour of the Palestine Action protests in just the same way that you did in the United Country? When the Chair mentioned those arrests in relation to the protests against in the protests on Palestine Action Group, I condemned any violence towards a police officer. To be clear, you condemned violence towards police officers. You didn't condemn the violence at that particular protest. That was my point. My second question is you talked about a call for evident information around the investigation on the last protest we just had. Has that same call been put out for investigation and evidence on the Palestine Action march? And I ask that because, of course, they're a prescribed organisation. So has the Mayor and your office been as vociferous in supporting anything to help that investigation?
I'm sorry, I mentioned that today because the appeal is live today.
I understand.
So that's why I did. We regularly support calls for evidence in all cases. So I'm happy to do that. Whatever helps the police investigate and bring people to justice is important.
Okay, thank you, Chair.
Assembly Member Best.
Thank you, Chair. Deputy Mayor, I'm slightly concerned by some of the assertions members are making about protesters. I think that it's fair to be even-handed, and there is certainly not an even-handedness, I think, from shown this morning from some members here. But with that in mind, one of the comments, and this wasn't my initial question, was around live facial recognition. And can you confirm how many? There was, I think, a comparison from Assemblymember Small Edwards between Notting Hill and United the Kingdom, wasn't there? Can I confirm how many arrests there were at Notting Hill?
$528.
Thanks. Can I confirm how many people were stabbed?
4 violence with injury. I've got.
I believe it was 5, but 4 perhaps. And can you confirm how many officers were attacked?
55 were arrested for assaults on officers.
Thank you. And if we look at Unite the Kingdom protests this weekend, can you confirm how many arrests there were?
So far, I believe there have been 25 arrests.
Can you confirm how many officers were attacked?
I don't have that figure in front of me.
And can you confirm how many stabbings there were?
I don't believe there was any.
I don't believe there were either. That's why I think it's a false equivalence, and I think actually the fact that that was presented to you was slightly strange. I just wanted to move on to the comments from the Mayor himself around these protests, saying the leaders of the far right are once again attempting to hijack our flag, with minorities being intimidated and fear, hatred and division being sowed. That follows on as well from a piece that the Mayor has put in The Guardian today regarding President Trump's state visit, in which he has written an article which lies throughout and also in itself sows division and hatred and will intimidate and scare those from ethnic minorities within the capital. Can the Mayor do more to unite? Because at the moment he is using the language of a charlatan of equality and instead is sowing division and making people more worried.
I know that the Mayor has been unequivocal in his work around community cohesion. He has, for example, used Trafalgar Square repeatedly to celebrate all forms of diversity across London, including St George's Day. I know that the Mayor is currently doing a huge campaign on the Love and Wanted campaign to make sure that everyone in London feels honoured and respected. And I think it's right that British values that we all commend on equality and inclusion and tolerance for people of all backgrounds and all religions are at the forefront of people's mind. I know that myself as a black woman and many of the communities across the weekend have reached out to us and voiced their concern and fear about what happened. Assemblymember Roberts mentioned the Southport riots of last year on the back of this horrible attack on 4 young girls that were across the country, didn't take hold so much in London, but really spread fear and division. And I think in the face of that, it's important to be clear what kind of city we live in and what kind of country we live in and why it's, for me, the greatest city in the world.
I think that you don't see what's staring back at you in the mirror, Deputy Mayor, because it is as well the Mayor and yourself to a degree. I think back to the words you spoke about Assemblymember Hall during the electoral campaign, that yourselves caused that hate, division. We saw the murder of Charlie Kirk last week, and that is in truth because on the left, people like you, people like the Mayor, exaggerate and lie about members of the right. That is what is consistently happening, and it will lead to more violence. But I would put to you one positive thing. If the Mayor, as he said, believes that the flag has been hijacked, perhaps we can do more to fly the St George's flag and reclaim, if that is what he believes is happening, to reclaim our flag and fly it proudly at City Hall and across the GLA and TfL estate. Will that be considered?
I mean, that's something that obviously is outside of my remit and can put on, but I have
Do you think that would be a good idea?
I mean, I think that the flag of our country, as someone who was born in this country, who supports the English football team, I think that it's right that we all, are able to feel pride in our country and the symbols around that. But in order to be able to do that, that needs to be around, as I said, the championing of British values. And British values, I mean, have at their best been what we saw in the Second World War, what we saw on the back of the Ukraine refugees, a place of inclusion and tolerance.
So I don't think we're disagreeing. So
Right.
I'm asking, do you think that would be a good suggestion?
Sorry, the suggestion?
Being that we could fly the St George's flag more proudly across the GLA and TfL estate, say.
I mean, I don't know what the current flag policy is, and it's not outside of the remit of my role.
But you are part of trying to keep communities together and increasing that pride. And I'm saying the mayor is saying that this is causing an issue, the hijacking of our flag. Maybe we should reclaim it. Do you think that's a good idea? That is within your remit.
I mean, within my remit, I know that it's really important that we do the work around community cohesion, community safety, to make sure that everyone in the community feels safe, that we speak out and don't tolerate hatred and intimidation. And we're about to move into Hate Crime Awareness Week, which we'll be doing a lot of action towards.
Right, okay, thank you. If we can try and keep it on track, Assembly Member Garbett.
Morning. I just want to start quickly by speaking about the public order policing report that we did earlier this year as a committee, which had a recommendation around new guidance for the public around how the Met will use its new policing powers. Obviously, that was a cross-party report that came from the committee. The Met responded to say that that was out of their remit, but something that the College of Policing, in conjunction with NPCC, would have to develop. I think that would be extremely helpful. Obviously, we all do because we agreed to that recommendation. So I just wondered if that's something you've just had any discussion with the College of Policing or NPCC.
So I'm actually catching up with the college in 2 weeks, and it's one of the things, as I'm aware, it is one of the recommendations which has come from this, which is on my kind of agenda, if you want to call it that.
Great. That's really reassuring. I know we're short on time, but it's just really good to know that that's being kept alive, because I think it would be incredibly helpful for everyone. Obviously, it came, from the committee. And just to speak about some of the things that have been happening over the last few weeks and things that have been brought up by other committee members. So I do want to talk about how the policing of the weekend compares to other protest policing. We know that Palestine Solidarity Campaign, along with its coalition partners, have taken part in a number of national demonstrations. The police themselves have described them as peaceful and well-disciplined, but they have been over-policed and subjected to unprecedented conditions, things like, often at the last minute, things like banning their marches, like the route that they want to march on, criminalising things like banging pots and pans and percussive articles. And these conditions have been questioned by legal experts. So I just wondered if you've looked into these at all, these extraordinary conditions, and how they meet the requirements under the Human Rights Act, and how some of that compares to the operation of the protest, the United Kingdom protest on Saturday.
Thank you. I know that I recognise your description of, like I said, about the protests this weekend, the majority of protesters acting peacefully. I also know from conversations I've had on our oversight around public order that the Palestinian Solidarity Campaign has been regularly engaged with before protests to try and make sure, where possible, that the democratic right to protest is facilitated. I think my understanding of the conditions that have been put on, obviously, were on the back of a lot of evidence being submitted about the cumulative impact on some communities and the strength of feeling around those, and especially in relation to places of worship, and that cumulative impact being assessed by the officers in their operations, as previously stated, to be grounds to be able to condition.
I think one of them was disruption to businesses, and it was 6 p.m. on a bank holiday Friday. So I think some of the conditions do need further scrutiny, because I think they do sound like they're being against that democratic right to protest, which I know you've mentioned a couple of times is really important. So it's that concern that it might be being used disproportionately.
I mean, I think we need to look at that in the round, because what was the evidence base for that, I think, is important. So I'm happy to...
OK, if we can look into some of these specifically, that would be really helpful. And just to, make a point around, I know the comparison's been made between the Carnival and what happened on Saturday, but obviously they are very different events. And I think the comparisons are being used because of the demographics of the people that have been attending. And, they're not comparable, because one had 2 million people, one had 150,000. One has... directly related to increased fear of our communities. I think a number of us have been contacted by a coalition of Muslim groups to say their fear around kind of rising Islamophobia. But I think my concern about what happened on Saturday was the fact that lots of people broke the police line. There's evidence that people just were allowed to walk through police lines and be racist to people like Diane Abbott from just walking through a police line, and the police claimed that they can't stop where people are walking, which is incredibly different to what happened earlier in the year when people walked through a police line holding flowers up Whitehall towards Trafalgar Square and then stopped when they couldn't get any further. So I think some of the descriptions of the policing, I think, need to be further interrogated, because we know that the police had not expected that number of people. We know people completely broke the order and took up loads of space, and there was ended up being 8,000 people kettled in the middle of Whitehall for 4 hours. So I think those are the bits I haven't heard today about that disproportionate policing and people being allowed to break orders and not being arrested when people in January were just slightly on the wrong bit of pavement and were arrested.
I mean, I think it's not for us to investigate the ins and outs of the protests here today. I think if there are complaints, and I know that there have been, that they need to go through the correct process. What I will say overall is, when I've asked about public order in our oversight meetings, I think it's really important to understand that, as ever in the line of duty, the police officers are trying to make split-second decisions on the best possible ways of keeping order and facilitating protests. And if there are things that need extra scrutiny and there are complaints or concerns, that they need to take the right processes in being investigated.
OK, I can provide you with more evidence of this, because I do think it is a bit concerning, that disparity. Thank you.
Okay, in the order of balance, can I just say I've been contacted by lots of Jewish people over the last 2 years who feel very frightened of coming in. I really think that we should ask the chair if we can have a whole discussion around policing tactics when we've got a police officer here, because you can't answer what happens with operational views, which is what my colleague has spoken about. This is why we need somebody that is a police officer here. Now, we're going to have to get a wriggle on. Assemblymember Duval hasn't spoken at all. And then I've got 4 Assembly members that want to come back, but we are really over time. So we'll see what Assemblymember Duval has got to say, and then we'll look at the time.
So I'm someone who believes in facial recognition and the importance in the future, but with checks and balances. So that's where I'm coming from. The Commissioner's comments yesterday throw that all into doubt about whether we're going to use it as an effective policing tool. I hear very carefully about what you say between the difference in demonstrations. It's not. I've got a high street where I live, Woolwich. Right, majority of people are law-abiding citizens. We deploy facial recognition. Why didn't we deploy it on Saturday? If we deployed it at Notting Hill, there's no case. It's the numbers. Now, the question is, you're right to come back and say, could the police have the capacity to move in or shouldn't? That's about the split-second decisions. But with all due respect, over the years, I've listened to a lot of guff about operational policing issues. I believe in operational policing independence, but that's why there's an incident going on. There are policy issues that we take stance on. Stop and search is one area where politicians have influenced how police behave. Now, I'm worried about tendencies of politicians on both sides, misusing the issues around operational independence to stop and stifle a real conversation about policy issues. It's policing by consent. So I'm really concerned about the mixed messages on facial recognition. We're either for it or we're not. Let's talk about the checks and balances and get onto the conversation about protecting people's rights in that circumstances. But actually, yesterday, listening to the Commissioner, I think that was chucked up in the air. And I think the fact that you and the police have not been able to share any deliberations around why it was deployed or not deployed tells us there is a problem, and you get into trouble because people say you're picking and choosing when you deploy it and you're taking sides. So I think there are issues there that you urgently need to address with the police. Secondly, I just want to say I think I'd leave it there, because I think if we're going to return to it, Chair, I think it's just very important that we do have a conversation that includes around operation policing issues, right? And there's someone who would defend that right, but I've got real concerns now in terms of the direction of travel that we're taking. It creeps into other issues like opening of front station counters and everything else. So if we're going to return to it, then we'll pick it up. But can you give me a view about how do we engender trust and confidence, policing by consent, and a real issue of when we get police officers before us to ask these questions around it. There are many different views around the table. I've got no truck with any extremist of any demonstrations. I'll not defend extremists and their rights, and particularly I won't defend people that break the law, as we've seen on a number of demonstrations around that. We don't pick and choose if people break the law around that. I've had Tamil constituents who've lived under the threat of not being able to say how they've wanted to do because the police have immediately contacted them about issues when they have spoken at demonstrations or private meetings, and it's been reported back about their views about what was going on in Sri Lanka in terms of their population. This is, we are picking and choosing when. There were comments made that people should be spoken to that were generating issues of hatred but leading people to incite violence. There is no, I've read the comments. It's clear. So somehow we've got to get away from this inconsistency and be very clear about what the approach will be in the future.
Okay, I've got four people that want to come back, but can I say only if you've got something different to say, and I will stop you if you go on too long. We have got a whole meeting that has not started yet. You're happy to be removed. Okay, thank you very much for that. Assembly Member Small-Edwards, very, very briefly.
Yeah, very brief, Chair. Just responding as I was name-checked personally around why I compared Carnival and Unite the Kingdom. The reason I did so was because if you look at the arrests, not on a total basis, but on proportional basis, there are 2.6 arrests per 10,000 people at Carnival, 1.9 arrests per 10,000 people at Unite the Kingdom, and live facial recognition wasn't deployed at Unite the Kingdom, so it probably would have been higher had that been deployed. Just wanted Assembly Member Best to be aware of why I referenced that. Thank you very much, Chair.
Fair enough. Assembly Member Lord Bailey, very briefly.
Just to be clear, that is not a point, because crime is crime. If you're the victim of the crime, you don't care if it happened to 10,000 people or one. Deputy Mayor, I would just like to ask you, some of the questions you've had to answer this morning are straying into area of legal recourse. Some of the members have asked you to comment on things that only the court could change or not. What conversations are you and the Mayor having about pushing back against that? Because the Mayor's authority stops at some point. do you feel that you are well enough equipped, understand enough and prepared to say to members, actually, that's a legal concern, not one for the mayor? So, you know, we spoke a lot this morning about what's happened at protest, people being kettled, people being treated differently. At what point will you and the mayor say, OK, that's for the legal system, not for the mayor?
Sorry, are you asking me to go across the questions and answer?
No, I'm asking you, can you identify for us, when you're asked a question, right, that you believe is legal, so for our legal system, rather than the mayor to deal with? Because I think some people here are using this as an arena to push their politics and their legal concerns, and the mayor is not about that, I would argue.
I think...
Very, very, very briefly, please.
Yeah, I think that that's really important, and I think obviously it's really important that the Home Office, you know, for example, the prescription of Palestine Action Group was a decision of the former Home Secretary. I understand that it's being judicially reviewed. However, in policing terms and legal terms, it's for the police to enact the law.
Okay, thank you. Very, very briefly, Assemblymember Best.
Well, I think the point has just been proven, but Assemblymember Garbutt made an extremely defamatory comment with which she should withdraw, where she said that I had brought up Notting Hill Carnival based on the demographics of the people that attended. You did. You said people are making a comparison based on the demographics of people that attend. No. And as is demonstrated, Assemblymember Small-Edwards was the one that made the comparison, and that's why I compared it again. Secondly, people have mentioned the size of both of those events. I think they're proving the point to me of why these are not comparable, because we used live facial recognition at an event where the size of the event was much larger. I think we also need to consider they are different, because the Commissioner himself said it would be chilling to use live facial recognition at a protest. And 4, Assemblymember Small-Edwards seems to be minimising the crime at Notting Hill Carnival, and he should have that conversation with the families of the people that were stabbed.
Right, OK. I think we must come back to this. We've all got very different views, which is good. This is why we're elected to scrutinise, which brings it back to the point the police need to be here. I'll ask our chair if we can bring it back and we can have the time to discuss, because we do have different views. Thank you. So I'm now going to start on the proper questions, Deputy Mayor. In what, and obviously I'm talking about the Met's thing for London, in what areas has the Met made the most progress since a new Met for London was published 2 years ago?
Thank you, Chair. I think since the publication of New Met for London, the police's overall policing plan, and discussed previously at this committee, progress has been made. This has been investigated by the HMIC and as part of their work to come out of Engage, which happened last year. I think in the key metrics of in line with the New Met for London plan around more trust, we now know that 74% of Londoners say they have trust in the Metropolitan Police, and that's in the last year, which is a 3% increase from last year. We note that that is variable across demographics, but it's important. Less crime. Rates of violence are lower in London than across England and Wales, and violence with injury offences is reduced by 18% in the last year, which is a greater reduction than those recorded across England and Wales. It's also in the area of public protection, which was a key concern in the Casey review. Important to note that VOG offences, including sexual offences, stalking and harassment, are lower in the Metropolitan Police Service than across England and Wales, and there is a positive outcome rate on rape, which is also higher in previous years. Similarly, on high standards, we've seen operations like Dragnet, Onyx and Assure have led to the departure of hundreds of officers and individuals due to vetting and misconduct. So those are the areas of progress.
Excellent. We all like to see progress. Tell me, in the training, when the officers are trained, do they get trained on how to recognise the rape gangs or the grooming gangs?
There is definitely public protection
No,
training.
Specifically
on group-based sexual violence.
Yeah, rape gangs.
Yes.
Yeah.
On child sexual abuse and group-based sexual violence, there is definitely training in as part of the public protection training.
That's interesting, because I spoke to an officer who had been on this training, and there wasn't training on how to recognise children in that position. Have you? Did you specifically make sure that there is training on I know the mayor doesn't know what a rape gang is. I'm hoping you do, but surely we need to make sure that police officers can recognise if there are or where there are rape gangs.
I know that this issue has come up repeatedly in this committee and in other committees, and I know that the chair has heard from the Commissioner and Deputy Commissioner as well as the Mayor on this issue. I know that they have said before, and I am happy to reiterate now, that because of the volume of work around child sexual exploitation and child sexual abuse, that we know that the characteristics of child sexual abuse in London tend to vary in compared to that we see elsewhere in the country. I think that there's a point around the definition of group-based sexual violence that needs.
Can I just go back on something you said? So London is unique in that way, is it? We don't have the rape gangs or whatever you want to call them. We don't have them as every other city seems to have them.
I don't think we can say we're unique. I think first of all, I want to make sure that I am unequivocal in saying that all forms of child sexual abuse are completely abhorrent.
Of course.
That we're talking about children going through the most horrific crimes.
Absolutely.
And they deserve
we can all agree
all
on
the
that.
support, and that's why the Mayor has commissioned.
We don't have the same as there are in other areas.
I'm saying that from our understanding, and that's when we've questioned the Metropolitan Police, we've been told, and as have you, that that the majority of what we see in London has a different dynamic to what has been seen in Rochdale and Rotherham, and that's not to say that there's not child sexual abuse or child sexual exploitation in London. And I know that the Commissioner has said that the most, and this was reiterated by Kevin Southwood yesterday, that the most problematic things that we see in London are related to peer-on-peer and county lines and child sexual exploitation in relation to the drug market. That is not to say that there aren't other forms of group-based sexual abuse. And I want to go back to my previous point. This is why we commission organisations like the Lighthouse and the Violence Exploitation Service to make sure that we support the victims of this awful abuse.
Deputy Mayor, I've heard what you've said, and I've heard what the Mayor has said, and I have been told that there isn't specific training in how to recognise situations where there is rape gangs, but I haven't done the training, so I can't comment. But I do know that I have actually had one-to-ones with victims of rape gangs that happened here in London. So I know that for a fact because I've spoken to them. Now, whether it's suddenly disappeared in the last couple of years, I very much doubt. And then, of course, some of us read the article in the Express where former Detective John Wedger stated that he was threatened by senior officers in Scotland Yard for his investigations into grooming gangs in London, stating that he would lose his home, his job and his children if he came forward with information regarding these grooming gangs. So, do you have confidence in the Met's senior leadership that whistleblowers will be supported in calling out cover-ups of child sexual exploitation? Because I've spoken to the victims, or some. I've got more to speak to, and hopefully more will come forward. I find it very difficult to believe that it happened a few years ago and is not happening now. I hope to God I'm wrong. But is this, oh no, it's not the same in London attitude, which you've just come up with? It's the mayor saying to me he doesn't really know what I'm saying. What exactly do I mean? That doesn't give the public any confidence. And let me tell you, the girls and women that have actually seen him say that, well, shall we just say they're very less than impressed because they're the victims of it. Do you think we should be taking this more seriously?
I am completely unequivocal in stating that we should take all forms of child sexual abuse seriously.
Okay, can we just concentrate on these grooming gangs, not spread it around everything else? Can you give us your assurance that somebody will look into this specific thing? It is specific. It can't be lumped in with other things. It just can't. I've spoken to these victims. It is horrendous, and it's not always girls. It's sometimes boys. You literally come out talking to them, crying, because it is so dramatic. Can you not just keep putting it with everything else and start concentrating on what we all know to be grooming gangs or rape gangs?
Can I say, first of all, I commend the importance of a victim-centred approach in this. This is why our Victims Commissioner does the work that she does, the Independent Victim Committee, to give us that independence to make sure that victims have a voice in this system, and that is very much true for victims of child sexual abuse. I think it's important that, yes, we have repeatedly asked the Metropolitan Police, especially public protection officers, to get reassurance on the dynamics, and as have you, the dynamics of and current scene of the child sexual abuse. There is a national inquiry on this. I believe the officer you referenced has provided evidence to that inquiry, and it's important that that inquiry goes forward. I have personally asked that the Metropolitan Police fully respond to the recommendations of that inquiry, and they will do so. I think that I understand how harrowing it is, the work to talk to victims. I do that myself. I deeply understand that, and especially with children, and we must do all that we can to support them.
So
which
do you
is
think
why
you're being told the truth? Are you confident that you're being told the truth, that there are none of these grooming gangs that we've heard of in the north? Are you absolutely convinced that you are being told the truth?
I mean, there'll always be like known
yes or
unknowns.
No?
There'll always be known unknowns, but I can assure myself that I have repeatedly asked for information on this thing, and we have been told that the majority of what we see in relation to group-based child sexual exploitation, which has been repeated at this committee and directly by officers when it has been asked, is that the majority of what we see doesn't have the same dynamics as Rotherham and Rochdale. It's important that the national inquiry goes forward in this, and that any evidence submitted is followed up, and that we are assuring ourselves that we are also doing all we can in the meantime to support the victims, which is why the Violence and Harm Exploitation Support Service and the Lighthouse, which is a national leader in child sexual abuse, is supported by the
I'm appalled that there isn't a whole section in the training on how to recognise that this is going on. I'm just very, very concerned. And the reason it's constantly brought up here is that every one of us here is concerned about this. Of course we are. You know, and all the time it's pushed into something else from you.
Public protection and child sexual abuse, that is very important, as am I. And as I've said, this is why we've asked, this is why the mayor invested more money into public protection. This is why
this is the mayor that didn't know what I was talking about, and it's out there. Everybody saw him say, I don't know what she's talking about. Can she explain what she means? We all know what I mean. But I wish that this was taken far more seriously. And I hope that the information I've been given that it wasn't touched on in the training is wrong. And if it is correct that it's not, will you please look into the fact that officers should be trained how to recognise what we all know as a grooming gang? I'll carry on now, but it really needs to be explicitly explained.
Kenny, did you have information on the training?
Not the training. Well, all I was going to say is, I mean, I've personally spoken to what was Commander Sudworth, now DAC Sudworth, about this, who gave the same assurances that he and senior officers have given to you, about not recognising in their figures that there's the same extent of problem. Clearly, the government has got Operation Beaconport, which is going to be the NCA-led investigation, which looks back at all of this. And I know the Met has been asked to identify any NFA'd group-based CSE cases with sort of either one victim and 2 or more perpetrators, and they're going to provide that by, I think, March next year, off the top of my head. But all I'm saying is that at the moment, I certainly have no reason to disbelieve or not trust what I'm being told.
But Kenny, March next year, if there are girls going through this now, and I really do wonder how it's happened, the people I'm talking to, that it isn't still going on. But we'll move on and I will carry on about this because it is so important. Your next question, Deputy Mayor, are there any specific areas where you would have expected the Met to have made more progress in the time of the new Met for London?
Thank you. I know that it's obviously, and this is something that came out from the Engage inspection, that the inspection recognised that the right plans are in place and are having green shoots of progress. However, I think given the scale of the challenge and the context of that challenge, the Commissioner describes it as trying to turn an oil tanker, that is recognised. I think that there's obviously and will always be ongoing work on ensuring that we continue to see, and that's why I know we're going to talk about it next, but the new Met for London 2 plan is not. It's about an evolution of the current areas of more higher standards, less crime, and higher trust and confidence.
Okay, when I said to you, are there any specific areas where you would have expected the Met to have made more progress in time, I would have thought that you might have mentioned gun crime is up 8% and rape is up 11%. But I must let my colleagues join in, so I'm surprised you didn't mention that.
Can I just, on rape crime, I think it's always important to note that the increase in reporting, especially on vulgar offences, is to be looked at. Obviously, we want to, and we are addressing that through a myriad of measures in reducing and preventing vulgar offences, but actually reporting is really important in rape cases.
Deputy Mayor, since I became an Assembly member, every time the numbers go up, all I hear from people sitting in your position is we're really happy about this because it shows that reporting is getting better, which as a one-off or maybe over a 2-year period is something. This is 8 years. 8 years. Oh, I'm so pleased the figures are up. It means more people are actually telling us of things that go wrong. Just how often can you do that? Because it's ridiculous, quite frankly. I must let my colleagues come in, but it is ridiculous. You're always happy that figures are going up because it means more people are reporting it.
I want to be very clear that I will never be happy that a single woman is raped. That is a very strong allegation.
Of course not. That's a ridiculous comment. Neither is anybody on this.
No. Well, I want to be clear on that.
Well, of course. And doesn't need to be said.
What I do think is also important, given what's happened in the Metropolitan Police around public protection, is that women have the confidence to report. And that is something that
I've been hearing it more and more and more, and the figures go up and up. And then
and as I said,
of course we are. But the figures go up.
It is important that we do the work to prevent violence against women and girls, and to make sure that women are seeing justice through the criminal justice system. However, I do think confidence in reporting is important.
Assembly Member Best. No? Assembly Member Garbett.
Thanks. Just quickly on data, in your report to us, you mentioned that there's been an issue with the knife crime reporting, and that it's been, I think it's been withdrawn from this month. So I just wanted to give you some space to just comment on that, so we are aware of what the issues were and when they'll be corrected.
So there should be corrected very shortly. It's still an ongoing issue related to the flagging, post the Connect issues and being able to compare pre-24 and post-24 issues, but that's something which has been, we're picked up directly with me. I actually thought that had already been fixed. It might just be that it's not been done in time for this report. If that's not the case, I'll come back to you.
Yeah, it'd be really good for us to get that update maybe before the next report so we can understand what the difference was and what that means for the picture of knife violence. Thank you. And my comment on, this introduction around a new Met for London, I've been clear in my personal response and in some of the comments that we made to Matt Twist when he was here a few weeks ago, is about the concern about the breakdown of progress that I don't feel is very kind of explicit within a new Met for London. In a meeting we had yesterday as a private briefing with the police around this, because they were unable to come today, they did mention that there'd been 90% progress against the new Met for London, and I was surprised that they were able to give such a specific figure, considering we don't have like a RAG-rated detailed report. So I first wondered if you've seen that data of how he's able to give a figure, and if not, are you pushing for that kind of transparency? Because as I've commented before, things like the front counters aren't kind of mentioned that they've been rolled back on. So the annex has just got loads of stuff that's happened, but it isn't transparent about things that haven't happened. So I just wondered if you've seen more detail.
Yeah, I've seen more detail through audit papers that they produce on this. I think the sort of 88% is 58% of which are actually delivered with no further work anticipated.
How many, sorry? What was
58% are delivered with no further work anticipated, and about 32% delivered in part with additional work going on. So there are sort of about 89% which are basically delivered.
Yeah, see, that would be really helpful, because in the annex we've just kind of got the headlines from each section, but it's not really given in that kind of detail, because it'd be really good for us to see, what's progressed but not complete, and then what isn't completed. But hopefully that will come through, because I know they're doing the consultation, but I think that would just be really helpful for us all to see, rather than just being a bit of a, the good things according to the police.
I think it's also important, especially on this, because it's about progress and transparency, that on New Met for London too, they've been put key indicators, haven't they, on their performance going forward. So that is a point that's been recognised and responded to in New Met for London too.
I was just going to say, I almost think the key difference between New Met for London 1 and New Met for London 2 is rather than a kind of action plan list, because the problem with action plans is you can just tick off what you've done and you don't actually see whether that's having an outcome and a benefit for London as a whole, as opposed to New Met for London 2, where I think it's a much more mature plan. They've actually got a performance framework and you can see what they're aiming at in this. I think it does show the evolution and progress that the Met have in that regard.
That's helpful. If you can do anything to push for that, the data that you've had to be shared as part of the consultation, that would be great. Thank you.
Thank you. And that finishes that section. We're now going on to a new Met for London 2, community crime fighting. And that's being started by my colleague, Assembly Member Duval.
Thank you very much, Chair. Given the issues of the obstruction policy, personally, I believe we've probably been too tolerant of the Met. I understand the complexities of moving people and taking people out to do other duties, but I do think there's been a lack of transparency, and we're not able to follow which safer neighbourhood teams or which town centre teams are supporting the obstruction policy. So I welcome in this in the next phase of a new Met for London that you talk of a new rotation policy to help manage obstructions. So what does that actually mean in reality? And how are you assured that the reduction in obstructions will be achievable, given the demands of policing in London?
Thank you. Yes, we have said, obviously, from the Home Office ourselves, and very much in line with the police, and that's reiterated in New Met for London too, the importance and strength of neighbourhood policing. And I recognise what you say. Only yesterday the Mayor said to the Commissioner how important it was to have embedded officers that knew their patch and had good relationships with partners. So that's, very clear. I know that you recognise that Obstructions is a broad term that means more than one thing. That 18% of, there's the current, for the numbers we have for July, the current rates are 18% overall obstructions, but that includes things like training and sickness and things that will always be a part of that mix. For obstructions in terms of being moved to other areas for public order or response, that is, the July numbers are at 4.8, and I think that that is, you know, something that the Met are really clear on is an issue. They've obviously had their aid policy that restricts around major events, and it's something that they continue to look at. Kenny, I don't know if you want to come in on the framework that Louise was talking about yesterday.
So the two things. I think there's the rotations policy and then there's abstractions. And just to say, Assembly Member Duval and the abstractions totally agree about the need for transparency, and the Deputy Mayor has asked us to produce a dashboard which will allow people to see much more clearly and at granular level what the abstractions are. I would say there's always going to be, it's termed as an abstraction, but there's always going to be local officers having to go to court who are sick, who are having to attend training. Now, technically, they fall within that abstraction. I think what's useful with the way the Met's now talking about it is they are defining what, and local aid counts as that, even though it's still neighbourhoods. So I think what's useful is now where they're talking about it more as a central aid abstraction, i.e. where it is the genuine public order offence as opposed to neighbourhood policing stuff. On the rotations policy, that is where the Metropolitan Police are talking about if people have spent 10 years outside of a BCU, if you like, on frontline policing or in a specialist command, that they will look to circle those people back into frontline policing, etc., because they see that as being so key and bringing the different skills and the different experiences they have to bear on what is the core role of policing, really.
Well, forgive me for my misunderstanding, because I thought this might have gave me some hope that we get some sense into the obstruction policy, and it clearly doesn't, because somehow then we've missed the point. Because I'll give you an example. My town centre is one of yours and the police's priorities in terms of, I think, you're a tier 1 for the summer issues. I saw yesterday for the first time in considerable months a patrol taking place. That hasn't happened. When I turned around to my partner and said, oh, we've got a patrol taking place. You see people doing response, but this was a patrol. And she said, it's not months, it's years. Now, we are busy in our town centre and we're constantly going around in different times. We never see police officers. If the town centre team is a visibility issue as much as a response issue, then we should be seeing it. So I would urge you to use the rotation policy to also talk about the obstruction, and thank you for giving me that information, but we can't go on like this because I don't think it's the adverse impact. I know that the demands are there, but there must be a fairer way for obstructions. We can't keep relying on the same type of people in terms of policing London's demonstrations at weekends, but it's only for the weekend. What else is happening during the week? This cohort should have been one of the first to be considered for any training that you were undertaking. That must now finish. These people are not just joining those issues, so why are we not seeing them at other times visibly in our areas and in neighbourhoods and town centres?
Assemblyman Duval, I mean, your town centre definitely was one of the town centres that was listed in the Tier 1. I'm deeply concerned about what you're saying in terms of that, because obviously we've put in significant investment and, you know, worked with the Met on an evidence base around the hotspot areas. Those town centres were identified based on data. So I will go back and understand how many patrols and exactly, because we've got the information through the summer returns on all of the summer initiatives. So I'll go back and see what was returned from that area, because it's very important. I mean, I want to state again that we really want to make sure that we've put in £32 additional million into tackling high volume crime, because we know how much it matters, and visibility does matter in terms of community confidence. So we need to make sure that we're doing that right.
Just very, very briefly on that. How are we managing the effect on the officers? Because some of them have dedicated their entire career into getting a specialism and being noted as a specialist in an area. And then they might be required to leave those roles and return to borough policing. I mean, the morale in the police at the moment is very, very bad, as you know. If they're being asked to give up something they've dedicated most of their career into perfecting, how are they going to feel about going? How are you going to manage that? Because I'd be mad. I can imagine some of them would be.
I mean, the Commissioner spoke about this yesterday. His thinking is twofold. First of all, for too long, neighbourhood policing has been seen as, for lack of a better term, a stepchild, unwanted, unprofessional, unstandardised part of policing, and that can't continue because we all know how important it is. However, those specialisms, and I think that this is something that we need to make sure is the case, is that those specialisms are seen as additional expertise to those neighbourhood teams. And Louise Puddyford, the DAC in charge of this, talked about this yesterday, about how those specialisms can invest in the importance of investigating and bringing about justice in those neighbourhood teams. But obviously that needs to make sure that that is happening. The Commissioner himself noted that there has been, some people are excited about it, some officers have said they've picked up skills from the rotation that, and you know, welcomed being back in the front line and being able to connect with communities again. And some have noted, have expressed frustration about being moved.
Yeah, I know they have, and we're having a real problem in recruitment at the moment, so I would think doing something like this need not necessarily be a good idea. Assembly Member Harani, was it about this specific, or did you come? Yeah, okay, if you keep it to this.
Yeah, and I'm happy for the response to be given in writing for the interest of time, but just something I did want to raise. I didn't have any Tier 1 town centre areas in my constituency, but I had 2 Tier 2s, and the feedback that I have sort of from police officers is probably no different to what they would have been doing already in those very busy town centres anyway. So any information you can provide us on the success of those in Tier 2 and the impact of those would be helpful. Thank you.
Thank you. I agree with that. Assembly Member.
Just on that point, I think yes, and you know, as a previous local authority leader, I know that most boroughs organise particularly around summertime and busyness, and I think what the Home Office tasked us to do through the Summer Preparedness Initiative was to have a more coordinated response across the boroughs, have that additionality of focus in the Tier 1 things, but also about having the opportunity to test and coordinate with local authorities. I'm sure Kenny can write back in writing on the particulars of that, but I wanted to explain that this was part of a wider set of matrix that the Home Office asked us to do around summer preparedness and convening partners and sharing information across the partnership on what was working and what's not. And that's important because of evaluations on how we can go forward, especially into the winter preparedness.
Thank you. I think that if we could have that in writing, it would be really useful. Thank you very much. Assembly Member Roberts.
Thank you, Chair. Deputy Mayor, how has MOPAC supported the Met in ensuring local crime fighting priorities are influenced by communities? And what more does it plan to do?
Yes, the Mayor and myself fully are committed to rebuilding neighbourhood policing, and we welcome the Met's commitment in planning for local crime fighting priorities directly influenced by local communities themselves through neighbourhood patrols and engagement and with local authorities and digital channels. We know that communities in London continue to feel concerned about neighbourhood crime and ASB, particularly around shoplifting, theft, and theft, which is why we've worked closely with the MPS and the government and local authorities on the Summer Streets initiative that I've just previously mentioned. We continue to support the Met's modernisation of its communication with Londoners, with City Hall, through our funding of Met Engage, which is the Met's new community engagement platform, to engage with their local teams. This is an important tool in facilitating better conversations between local residents and the Met on policing priorities, as well as we're working with the Met on the community scrutiny and transparency panels to make sure that we're also hearing the diverse views of Londoners.
Thank you. We've raised this before in previous meetings and indeed at Mayor's Question Time just last week. Communities across London are concerned that they will be losing their police front counters. Thousands of people have signed petitions. Thousands have written to Assembly members, both constituency and those who are London-wide members. We heard from the Mayor last week that he knew about plans to close police front counters as far away as last year, that he knew that that was a possibility. Whereas when we've spoken to you on this particular issue, you've seemed to think that this was a relatively recent development, that the most that was being discussed was reduction of hours, not closures. So did the Mayor and the Commissioner fail to share with you the fact that they were considering closures of police front counters as recently, not as recently, as far away as November and December of last year?
You'll know, as I did, as we all did, that front counters was included in the list on tough choices. Yes. in the work that the Metropolitan Police have been doing to prioritise in line with their budget. That talked about a reduction of hours. Indeed. I think the work that the Met has been doing on all of the tough choices is to take that from concept to implementation, as you know well through the work on Royal Parks and understanding the implementation mitigations that have gone through that. On front counters, I think that Matt Twist came to the committee in August and set out how the work that they've been doing has been data-led and also has considerations around volumes and geographic spread. And because of that, it was felt that some front counters needed to be remaining 24 hours. Some would be, based on that data, reduced in hours, the proposal is, and some are to close. I think it's important that, and I know committee members heard this in August, I know you weren't available, but that the data they're using is on footfall and demand, partly of that, and therefore, based on geographic spread, the ones that are closing mostly have the lowest demand in footfall.
I'm familiar with the rationale. The question is that last week we heard the Mayor saying that he knew that there was a potential for closure, not for reduced hours, closure, in November or December of last year. My question to you is, was that advice on closure, not reduction of hours, closure, shared with you at the time, or were you, as the rest of us, kept in the dark?
I mean, all of the tough choices have been discussed at several meetings. Yes. As we work through how we align the budget and work up the proposals in the implementation plan.
Okay, perhaps I can narrow down the question. When did you first hear the word closure in relation to police front counters? Was it in November and December of last year, or was it, as with the rest of us, July of this year?
In November, December last year, there were some discussions around, given the strength of need in terms of the budget, what would be red lines, and closures were discussed then. However, the proposals the proposals around the exact ones, I saw that in July.
Okay, so you knew as well that last November and December that closure was an option, but didn't bring this to the attention of this committee?
Because at that stage, nothing was agreed. It was very high-level conversations about what was to be tested.
Yeah, the first that we heard, we knew that the tough choices included reduction of hours. That was in our papers. We didn't hear about closure of front counters until much later. So you knew in meetings behind closed doors that closure was an option, but in public said nothing?
An option, but I had no specifics on that at all until July.
That's fair enough. In the response that the Mayor said, the reason why he's changed his opinion, I apologise, Chair, for going on slyly. The reason is that he said, when the facts change, I change my mind. Now, we know that the Met Police budget was hugely in deficit last year when the Mayor made his manifesto commitment. We also know that we haven't seen a massive drop-off in people using police front counters. Usage was still low at the time when the Mayor made his manifesto commitment. So the question I have, and I should possibly be asking the Mayor this evening at people's question time, which facts have changed to make him change his mind?
I mean, the data that the Metropolitan Police, obviously these are operational decisions that the Metropolitan Police have to take in line with what they feel is best in terms of delivering the priority.
Has that data changed since when the Mayor wrote his manifesto last year and people went to the polls based on that manifesto? Has the facts and data changed?
I wouldn't know, obviously I wasn't imposed at that point. I wouldn't know the specifics around the actual data around, for example, call handling rates, demand at front counters, how many people are now reporting online. I visited Crime Stoppers recently. They've seen a huge increase in reporting through their channels. So I don't have that comparative data to hand.
Perhaps we could get that comparative data in writing, Chair.
Well, I think so, and I think some of these answers you've obtained are quite appalling, to be honest. And all of us feel quite aggrieved because we are aware of how unhappy the public are, even if you and the Mayor are not. They don't want their front counters gone for a saving of something like 7 million for 17 of them. They don't want that. So we know what the public want. It's a damn shame that both the police won't come and you put everything down to operational. Yes, that would be very helpful, and thank you for bringing it up. I've seen Assemblymember Best.
Thank you. Deputy Mayor, you suggested then to Assemblymember Roberts you now know what the footfall is at police stations, which is music to my ear because you know that I've been asking you. I have asked Assistant Commissioner Twist, I've asked the Mayor. You've all promised to write to me and nobody has yet, over the last 6 weeks, told me what the footfall is. So please can you tell me the footfall at Chingford Station?
I mean, I don't have that information.
You just told Assemblymember Roberts you had it.
Sorry.
You just said we've mapped out the footfall.
I'm happy to answer the question in that, and I know that this is a question you put directly to Matt Twist in the committee, and I think I should be very clear on this, that the data they collect is on things that are reported at front counters, as Matt Twist told you in the meeting, not the wider information that I think you want on
You just
footfall.
told Assemblymember Roberts that you mapped out the footfall. So did you just tell a mistruth to Assemblymember Roberts?
I did not mean to mislead the committee. This is why I'm clarifying based on what Matt Twist told you. My understanding, and I could be wrong, Kenny, if you know, but they don't count how many people come in and out of the station. They count how many crimes reported.
Good, thank you, Kenny. But Deputy Mayor, to stick with you, can you confirm you have no idea how many people visit police stations?
I can confirm, as Matt Twist did to you directly, that the Metropolitan Police have based their data around this on how many crimes are reported at front counters. I want to
That's
also...
not the question, Madam Mayor. Can you confirm... should we try again? Can you confirm that you have no idea how many people visit police stations?
I can confirm, as Matt Twist told you...
No, I'm asking you to confirm that question, not a different question. This is how it works. So I'm asking you a question. I'm asking you to confirm the question I'm asking you, not to ask yourself a different question. Can you confirm you have no idea how many people visit police stations?
I can confirm that that's
You're
not
asking
information.
yourself a different question. Can
I'm
you
not
answer
trying
mine?
to answer your question.
You're not answering my question.
I can
you answer
confirm
mine?
that the Metropolitan Police don't record footfall at front counters.
Which would mean you have no idea how many people visit a police station.
I can confirm that the proposals on front counters were put together based on the information that the Metropolitan Police Service do record, and that is crimes
Would it not
reported
be
at front
important
counters.
to know how many people use a service before closing a service?
I understand, and I know that there are different uses of front counters, and that's why the Metropolitan Police are currently engaging, especially with people with protected characteristics, on the usage of front counters, so that that is properly equality impact. But I also think we must recognise that the major constraints of the budget means that these choices, all of them noted from the start as tough, are needed in order for the Metropolitan Police to have a balanced budget.
I understand that, but I think if you're making a difficult decision, one of the things you need is the facts about that decision. One of the biggest facts would be knowing the footfall. So given that you've known since November this is an option, why have you not been asking police stations to make a record of footfall in their stations so you can understand? Because as far as we know, the last data we have on this is from 2017. Reporting crime accounts for only a fifth of visits. You knew back in November you were considering this. It would seem pertinent at that point to go to the police stations and try and get some data on footfall, would it not?
I can reiterate that the police, in their work to take this to an operational proposal, have used the data that they have available to them, and that is on reported crime, and that 95% of that reported crime is now done online or on the telephone.
And have you looked into the type of crime? For example, if we're looking at rape, do you know how many rapes, the last time we got data on this, do you know how many rapes were reported at a front counter?
About 14.3.
Yes, correct, Kenny. Did the mayor know that, or were you just trying to help her out? 14% of rapes.
I'm not the mayor of London.
Sorry, the deputy mayor. Well, yeah, the deputy mayor, you're trying to help her out. 14% of rapes reported at a front counter. That is important. The type of crime reported at a front counter is important.
I agree with you, Assembly Member Best, which is why, through the work that the Metropolitan Police are doing at the moment, working up the proposals, it is important that those things are looked at through the equalities impact assessment.
But it is getting to the point of misleading. You openly just said to Assembly Member Roberts, this is based on footfall. Last week, the Mayor of London said, I will write to you. Last month, you and the Assistant Commissioner said you would write to me. You are being misleading. You need to be open that you don't have that data. Now going on to the cost of the proposals. The other cost I would like to know is how much is being saved from the closure of Chingford Police Station?
I don't have that individual granular information in front of me. This wasn't a topic that I was asked to prepare for today. I can ask the Metropolitan Police to provide that.
I've already asked for that information, and I've been waiting for about 6 weeks.
I'm happy to look into that for you, Assembly Member.
It's hard to believe when you've gone to the extreme of closing these front counters, not even looking at reduction at. Not even looking at a reduction.
To be made on
looking at not even looking at a reduction of hours. Not being clear about the savings in that. If I break it down per front counter, it would be £411,000 per counter. I've asked police officers in that station. I've asked inspectors. Does that make sense? They can't tell me how that figure would make sense. I need you to be able to tell me that figure and how that figure makes sense, and you can't.
I'm happy to chase the inquiry you've given to the Metropolitan Police.
Well, you were going to chase that on footfall, and here we are, 6 weeks later, admitting that you have no idea.
Right. Can we have, as a matter of urgency, the answers to the question that Assembly Member Best put? Because they are genuinely good questions that I would have thought that you would have the answer to. We need to know. You do not understand quite clearly just how upset Londoners are about having their front counters closed. We all know because we've received the emails all the time. They are very upset. I'm even more upset that you knew that it was a possibility in November, and as a politician didn't turn around and say that will upset absolutely everybody. We can't do that, especially, Mr. Mayor, since you promised you wouldn't do it in your manifesto. Anyway, I've got Assembly Member Duval and then I think Assembly Member Roberts. Very, very brief, both of you.
So rightly, people are asking questions about the finances. I just want to understand, because MOPAC is in charge of the policing budget. Yes, I'd say thank you for the nods. So if you're in charge of the policing budget, what steps have been taken to check and double check the figures that have been provided by the police of the savings of these front counter proposals have been given? So, if you could explain to us if that's happened and that exercise, and maybe you can add that to the list of writing back to us.
So I know that our CFO is quite... Sorry, apologies, normally I'm told to be quieter and speak more quickly. So our CFO, I know she has had quite extensive consultations with the CFO and others across in the Metropolitan Police about all of this. Exactly on what scale, I'm afraid that is on the finance side, not directly on my side of stuff, so I would need to give you more details. But I know that we do look at this, we do check the deliverability, how sensible we think it is in terms of the scale of it, and we try and do look at the cumulative impact to assess whether actually what the Met is proposing on the whole is within, I suppose, because you've only got a certain amount of change capacity, don't you? So there's no point listing 1,000 things which are each going to deliver £1 if you can only deliver 500 things. You need to then scale it at a proper level, because sometimes it's the same resource to deliver £1 as it is to deliver 1,000,000. So that will have been gone through. The exact details of that, if you want, Assembly Member Duval, I'll need to get from the CFO and put that back in a letter to you.
Thank you.
Assembly Member Roberts.
Very quick one, Chair. Given that there's been a commitment to give Assembly Member Best the details of the cost savings relating to Chingford Police Station, I wonder if it might be possible to get a written answer detailing every police front counter which is closing. It's a pity that it won't be available for the Budget Committee this morning. Oh, sorry, tomorrow morning, I imagine, given that we're looking at how the Assembly is sorting out the Mayor's manifesto commitments, of which this is one which has now been broken.
Yes, another blurred line. So just to confirm, we would like a cost-saving analysis breakdown for every front counter that you are going to close. Can I have your commitment that we will get that and get it very quickly?
We can endeavour to ask the Metro.
Timeline, please.
I mean, they've definitely got a breakdown on the reported crime, and they've already got that broken down by things.
As Assembly Member Best has pointed out, there's so much missing out of that. But the actual cost analysis would be good, and if we could have it, shall we say within 2 weeks?
Yeah, we can ask for that.
Yes, against every single station that's closing, because as a London-wide Assembly member, I'm getting requests. I'm going off straight from here to see somebody about another one closing. So that would be really useful. So you'll commit to within 2 weeks we will have that as a committee.
I mean, I'll commit to asking for it and making clear that that is your timescale, and I will let you know straight away, Chair, if there is any issue.
Yeah, it makes me nervous, you see, because poor Assembly Member Best has been promised twice and nothing has occurred. So maybe I'll phone you if we don't get it. How about that? Right, OK. Finally, we're going on to Assembly Lord Bailey.
Thank you, Chair. A new Met for London 2 states that the Met will implement a resolution centre. What does this involve, and what are the timescales for this, Deputy Mayor?
This is on their ongoing priority around improving call handling and call systems. You'll know that this is something that was noted in the first new Met for London needed improvement, and the Mayor has invested in to make sure that response times on 999 and 101 numbers are improved, and they are have been improving significantly. But I don't know, Kenny, if you want to comment.
So just
Sorry, in the interest of time, I want to move on because I have 2 other questions I want to get to. With the decline in number of officers and the increase in demand, how is MOPAC ensuring that officers will not be unduly thrown under the bus when investigations fail due to capacity constraints?
So, the one, I don't think there's any suggestion that anybody would throw officers under the bus here. The way in which demand into the Met is being managed is through something called crime management units, which is, if you look at the Met, they screen in a higher proportion of crime than almost any other force in England and Wales. And this is about what the crime management units do is take in and make a realistic assessment of whether there are any realistic lines of inquiry which can be followed in this, and where there aren't, they try and reduce, they will screen that out, and that means that officers should have more manageable caseloads going on. Just to go back to the Resolution Centre, what that is about is bringing together, so you'll have heard of TDIU, which is a telephone and digital investigatory unit, and that's trying to bring that into METCC so that you join up the investigatory capability with the contact capability so that you can resolve the sort of, I suppose, the non-urgent crimes, not wanting to use that term in a pejorative way, so that they can actually be resolved at first contact, which should give greater victim satisfaction and, again, to your point there, reduce demand on the officers.
One of the criteria for community crime fighting is ensuring the consistency high levels of service for those reporting rape. Serious sexual offences now have increased by 11.6%. Has there been a requisite rise in resources to deal with those cases?
There's been about 465 extra people put into the public protection teams, and if you look at the positive outcome rates in RASFO cases, that's risen over the last few years from under 4% to just over 13%. So with a higher caseload, they are actually delivering an even higher percentage of positive outcomes in that case, which I think is a very positive thing and something which the Met should be really proud of.
Okay. Does the Met have the expertise and the resources to improve its response to online and financial crime? For instance, online grooming against children as well has increased by 89% as well. They're 2 separate questions, by the way. So I want to talk about financial crime, and also, Deputy Mayor, I want to talk about protecting young people online. Do we have the expertise to do that within the Met?
So I think on the OSCE cases, which is the online child sexual abuse and exploitation cases, the Met has made real strides in that. If you look at the things which get the referrals which are coming in from NECMEC, and you look at the capabilities that these people have, I do think that is something which has increased, and the Met are doing a much better job. If you look at what happened in terms of the previous issues for concern raised by HMICFRS on child criminal exploitation and child sexual exploitation, those issues would have gone across all of their child safeguarding and child investigatory things, and they have made significant strides in that regard, would be my first point. There still is a growing demand in that case, and the Met are going to have to think about how that's managed. I agree, if that's the crux of the question. On the second question that you were asking about the capabilities of to do financial crime, especially online, that's a very, very difficult one for any force. My personal view on that is a national issue which requires national investment and requires a proper counter-fraud and investigation strategy, and requires proper investment, and is something that the government should be looking at through their white paper in that regard.
In the interest of time, Deputy Mayor, I'm going to come to you on this. Almost half of all the offences were on Snapchat. I'm focusing particularly on young people here, where the communication was known. How is MOPAC working with social media companies to clamp down on online offending and help the Met to track and monitor these offenders? Because, you know, there is an arena in which this is happening. It's a very particular arena. What are we doing to make sure that the police have the resources and impetus to work in that arena with these companies?
Yeah, I think you make a really prudent point, Lord Bailey, and this is something that obviously our work in relation to the online harm bill, these are the points that we're making in terms of making sure that especially we work in tandem with the government in pushing social media companies of all sizes, including, well, similar to the ones you mentioned, especially using encrypted communications, to have a higher safeguarding level and greater connection with investigations. So that's definitely...
So is because I'm particularly focused on MOPAC here. Is MOPAC in those conversations? Of course, the government have to do what they have to do, but are you having those conversations? Are you asking for specific things for following trends we have here in London?
Yes.
And you're asking social media companies to look at that?
We've... sorry? Yes. Yes, we are, and this is something that we're continuing to lobby both tech companies, but also government through its legislation to be stronger on. We had a representative at a meeting from the Ofcom who is taking over the regulation of the online space, and had an in-depth conversation with them about the problems that I'm concerned about how they can monitor reporting of individual incidences versus trends. So yes.
So when was the last time you met with a social media company, or effectively on behalf of Londoners, and said this is our concerns?
I haven't met up with any social media companies. I've obviously met with some of the tech industry around this, but also put my representations in relation to the online harm bill and Ofcom, who would be the regulators of that.
What I'm concerned is representations to the government are one thing, but you are the deputy mayor, so you have to work on a practical level. You have to ask these companies what they could do day to day, as opposed to what the law could change. That's years down the line, and we need effect now. So when are you planning? Why haven't you planned to write to these companies, call these companies in, go and see them? Because they could do changes right here, right now. And if you're not doing that, Londoners will feel like you are failing them. So what's your plan as leader of MOPAC to go and make that representation?
Because these are things that are, national priorities, that, obviously these are global companies. I know a lot of them are based in London. The way that we have looked at that so far is to work through in relation to government and the legislation that has changed. But we've been unequivocal. I know that talking to the previous FORG minister on this about how important it is for these companies. When the minister came to the FORG summit, this was something that we discussed about online harm and how important it is, especially to young people. And I know as well through our violence reduction unit, this is something that we're challenging directly with young people, is the use of the online space.
I get on that, and that's great, but talking to ourselves is not effective, is it? You are talking to the people who marshal that, or you are not talking to the people who marshal that arena, and I'm suggesting you should. You run MOPAC, you're the Deputy Mayor for Police. This is one of the biggest challenges to our young people. You should be making those representations directly. And I just want to hear what MOPAC's going to do directly. You haven't done it now, we understand that, but it'd be very useful if you could write back to us and change that. What are you going to do? The Mayor was very quick to blame everybody else for phone theft, then you went and spoke to those companies. Why are you not speaking to these companies about arguably the most serious threat that young people face?
As I said, we're not just directly talking to government. I know that through the Shared Endeavour Fund and through the work that the VRU is doing in the online harm space, that they are talking directly to young people to marshal that information. And I can look for ways that I'm sure colleagues and I can take that forward.
Thank you, but there's three people here. There's the young people, there's the government, yeah? Right, and there's a social media company. Talking to the government in this building doesn't count. We are the government, yeah? Talking to young people is great. You are missing the next big player, and I would suggest you quickly go and speak to them about their opinions, what they could do about it, because at this point you are failing young Londoners. Thank you, Chair.
Assembly Member Best, if you could be brief, I'd be so grateful.
Yes, thank you. I just wanted to briefly come back to the cyber helpline, which, we talked about previously. Obviously, MOPAC stopped funding for the cyber helpline for the London specific service. Luckily, donations, given the press around this, donations did come forward to keep that service going. Are you happy to meet with cyber helpline to talk about the work they can do to support Londoners going forward?
Yes, of course, I'm happy to meet with them, but I think it's also important that we support, that MOPAC supports through the victim support and online support with victims of online crime as well. But yeah, happy to meet with them.
Thank you. Can I ask Deputy Mayor and Kenny, would you like a 5-minute break? Do you want a comfort break? I'm not asking my colleagues because they can go in and out, but I'm asking, would you like 5 minutes? You would. Okay, we'll meet back here at 11:50. Welcome back to the Police and Crime Committee. We're moving on now to the culture change on the new Met for London, and we're starting with Assembly Member Garbett.
Thanks. What is your assessment of the Met's progress to change its culture, specifically what it's doing to tackle racism, male violence, so violence against women and girls, sexism, homophobia, ableism and misogyny? And what evidence do you have to support this? I know there's a lot of, and I've got some specific follow-ups.
Thank you. I think that I would give the overall assessment that the Met has made some significant progress in setting the structures in place on some of those key areas, including the launch of its internal cultural plan, the launch of the Race Action Plan, the launch of the Stop and Search Charter, launching 21 new professional standards unit, establishing the Culture, Diversity and Inclusion Directorate, and making sure that the values and guiding principles have been refreshed and continue to be embedded through training across the Met, as well as yeah, that's the same as and the HMIC, as previously mentioned, acknowledged this and progress being made alongside this. In terms, however, I would say is to conclude my assessment is I think that those structures are welcome. I think that they're significant. I understand the scale of them. What we need to continue to challenge is the impact on those, and that's something that HMIC recognised as well, that it was put in terms of green shoots at the front line, and I think those, you know, I recognise that assessment, and through the work that we've been doing through the London Policing Board and oversight and into this area, I think when we've looked at the individual plans and some of the training, it's clear that there's ongoing work in these areas, and I also work we do on the public attitude surveys, as noted before. Trust and confidence has increased. However, for certain groups, particularly LGBTQ+ communities and disabled communities, there's progress that needs to be made.
Thank you. I don't know if you've met with any disabled people's groups recently, but they've been calling for a co-produced disability action plan because they feel like that's the only way that they'll understand that the Met is taking kind of ableism and, you know, their experience of hate crime, etc. So I just wondered if that's something that you'd support.
I met with the Equalities Reference Group last week, and definitely the conversation around ableism it was live in that conversation. And I think, moreover, it's important, very important, that you know, external and expertise, especially directly from groups, is welcomed by the Met, and through their plans, engagement and consultation with equalities groups is always important.
Do you think the plans that you've just described sufficiently cover the issues raised by disabled Londoners? Because when I asked the Commissioner about this last year, he said that they have a plan but it's not written down, which I and the disabled people's organisations don't find very reassuring. So just wondered if you feel like there's enough, that you've seen enough to show that they're taking ableism and issues affecting disabled people seriously, because I think without that action plan it's a bit hard to tell.
I mean, I think that it's important to have those action plans and to have dedicated work on all of the equalities issues. The internal cultural plan obviously referenced it, but I can see the value in having individual works on this. Obviously, it's also important to recognise the intersectionality across those things. Obviously, the experience of a female disabled person or officer is different to another group with a different intersectionality, and that's something that we only yesterday were pressing the Met on.
Great. It'd be really good if that can continue to be raised, because I think that would provide that assurance to disabled Londoners. And then the other points I wanted to raise were just the issues that came to light on Friday around the issues that continue to happen at Charing Cross Police Station, and the fact that even given the scrutiny of that police station, there's been some horrific reports of discriminatory remarks, misogynistic comments and excessive use of force. And it's really worrying that, given all of the work that seems to be happening on culture, these behaviours still happen, that they were occurring kind of August 2024 to January 2025. And I'm just really worried that these instances are still coming to light, especially in an area where there's already been a lot of scrutiny.
Thank you. I mean, I think it's important to recognise that that incident was directly referred by the Commissioner to the IOPC and is now a live investigation. And all of the things, it's also important to note that all of the things are allegations that need to be investigated. However, they are allegations about very serious issues, and issues that are obviously, given the history of the Metropolitan Police, important that it's looked at. Speaking to the Commissioner about it directly, I know that he has suspended some of the officers while this investigation goes forward, and also significantly moved around officers across the team whilst keeping Charing Cross Station operational. I think it's, I'm really clear with our conversations with IOPC and HMIC as the oversight body that we need to make sure that as the work continues on this investigation, we are still doing all we can to support and challenge Metropolitan Police on ongoing delivery against their cultural reforms.
So has this changed anything you're going to be doing to hold the Commissioner to account? Because obviously that, it's a pretty big, and concerning incident. And I just think, are you going to be changing any of the ways that you hold him to account on this? Or, what has he said about what he's going to do about the culture elements? Obviously, you've described kind of specific, actions that have been taken. But what about the wider culture that allows these things to happen?
I mean, I definitely, I think when things like this come up, allegations of this nature come up, I think you're right to think, what more can we be doing? As I've said, I know that this is something that myself, the London Police Board, and my MOPAC officers continue to directly challenge the Met on in various areas. And I think it's really, for me, important that in the new Met for London plan, something I've definitely pushed for is making sure that work on cultural reform isn't held in certain departments. It's something that is embodied throughout the organisation, and I think that this is evident that this work needs to continue and be driven forward.
Thank you. And I think it would be good for this committee to keep an eye on the outcomes of the IOPC report and do more on this culture.
Absolutely right.
Thank you.
Absolutely. I'm sure the Chair will agree. Assembly Member Duval.
Can you update us and also tell us what's needed from the government to improve us on police accountability arrangements?
Yes, of course. The Mayor has long been clear that the whole regulatory framework on police misconduct and performance is complex and badly in need of reform. That's why we welcome the government's vetting regulations in 2025, which came into force on the 14th of May this year, which means that passing background checks has become a legal requirement for all serving officers, and also has created a new formalised process to enable police officers to remove officers who are unable to meet vetting requirements. The new regulations set out on how appeals against officers' withdrawal of vetting should be held, and MOPAC has a statutory duty in its appointment of independent panel members on vetting appeals, and training is currently underway to ensure that all independent panel members are adequately prepared on the vetting procedures and the new vetting regulations, with a lot of the appeals expected to be heard in the autumn.
Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you for your brevity. Assembly Member Roberts.
Thank you, Chair. What oversight does MOPAC provide over the Met's use of its stop and search charter? And what impact has the charter had so far?
Thank you. The Stop and Search Charter, which was announced in February of this year, was following a large programme of consultation and co-production events across London with communities and young people. The Met's new Stop and Search Charter commits the Met to supporting all officers through the improving of training, and it intends to community to greater role in oversight of how and stop and search is used. And this is something that we continue to engage. I don't know if anyone wants to come in terms of the work that he's doing. Oh, well,
just going to change. We're just going to change it. It's. I think it's you.
we did 2 hours. We did 2 hours, which is good going.
Yeah.
Good going.
No, I was only playing.
Although we will stop billing.
There we go.
Okay, can you hear me now? Is it working okay? Okay. And this is something that MOPAC continues to engage with the Met in terms of its progress, including a discussion at the May London Policing Board on the development of the delivery plans which underpin the Charter. The MOPAC's community engagement team are currently working with the MPS to ensure that this is also built into the new community scrutiny transformation programme to ensure that communities are scrutinising compliance with the Charter and its recommendations in force monitoring through the scrutiny transformation programme. It's also something that obviously the data I've referenced before in committee that the data and insight team are doing a lot of research in, and we want to work with the Metropolitan Police on the back of that research. Kenny, do you want?
Yeah, so I think the key thing about this, if you think about it, I mean, essentially this was a recommitment by the Met to, one, they got young people to write this, which is very positive, but two, it's all about procedural justice, isn't it? It's all about this being done fairly. Now, why does that matter? Well, our own research would tell you, and the public attitude survey would bear this out, when people are stopped and searched, if they perceive that that's done in a fair manner, their trust in the Met will drop by maybe 1 percentage point, 2 percentage points. If it's perceived that it's done in an unfair manner, it genuinely does crater. And over the last few years, we've seen the perception that stop and search is used fairly by the Met continuing to fall. So I think those are the things which we look at. The Community Scrutiny Transformation Programme will be really important because that was part of the Stop and Search Charter as well as the London Race Action Plan. And that's about building on the great work that our community monitoring groups do at the moment, but ensuring that there's better support there so that the feedback that we get when they watch body-worn video, when they look at how the Met is with the grounds that are recorded, that does actually accord with the Charter, because I think most confidence isn't going to come from me sitting here and telling you what a survey says. It's going to actually come from Londoners themselves having overseen the Met and feeding that back to their local communities. And I think the way in which we support and build upon the good work at the moment is going to be really important in that regard.
Thank you. Just one supplementary, Chair. It's just going back to the issues around Charing Cross Station that Assembly Member Garbutt raised. Notwithstanding the fact that this is subject to live investigations, etc., but if there is found to be more serious failings, will you order a full-scale review into culture and behaviour at this police station if there is found to be serious issues?
I mean, that is part of the work that the IOPC is covering. So
they'll be looking at the individual cases and possibly wider stuff, but this seems to be a pattern of behaviour here. So will you ask for additional work to be done on it?
Yes, I mean, I think that overall there's a need for a review, continued review on the work that's been happening on the cultural assessment. But yes, that is something that in discussion, as I mentioned, with the IPC, we will be moving forward on.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Colleagues, we've got less than an hour because I want to be finished by 1 and we're running short of time. So, Deputy Mayor, I know you like reading some of the answers out, but if you know the answer, if you could just give it in a briefer way, that would be, we'd be really grateful for that. So we're now going on to fixing our foundations, and it's Assembly Member Best.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. The new Met for London 2 states that the Met will introduce a new resource management system. Could you tell us a bit about what that involves and the timescales?
Yeah, I mean, I'll start, and then Kenny, if you have more detail, please do come in. I think it's really, this is something that I want to give credit to the previous Commissioner, Deputy Commissioner Dame Lynn Owens for in her work to grapple with workforce issues and placement, and the current system is 20 years old and suffers from frequent outages and backlogs, and therefore needs replacement rapidly. And this is something that is currently I've signed off in terms of tendering a new system, and I'm waiting for I've been presented the business case, and so we're waiting for the final business case to come forward, and the outcomes of that procurement. But it's definitely something that, in terms of efficiency, in terms of rostering and personnel, to make sure that we're deploying the right resources in the right places is critical.
Is it just, can I confirm, around staff, say, staff resources, or is this around the estate resources as well?
It's largely staff, so it's about, so CARMS is your computer-aided resource management system, and PSOP is essentially your finance thing. They would tell you that some of your staff are in different places and don't speak to each other, at which point it becomes very difficult for an organisation like the Met to actually manage itself in an effective way. The idea about this is integrating that into the Met's business services and having actually, so you can see that your financial alignment, your resource alignment, I mean, fairly basic stuff, if I'm honest. Actually, it's not a basic programme to run to integrate now, but it is fairly basic management information that you'd want to have if you're running a £4.5 billion business. So it is to bring all of that together and make sure that the Met management team has the right information in the right way.
Deputy Mayor, the National Uniform and Equipment Survey found that 52% of officers in London stated that they had negative experience with their body armour and combat trousers, and I think perhaps more worrying, 50% of officers noted that the uniform they wore created a health issue. That's really startling. Is this going to be tackled? Yeah, I mean, I think, you know, when Mark Rowley, the Commissioner, talks about fixing the foundations, it's stark the amounts of improvement needed. And obviously our work with MOPAC financing the decisions around the spending in these areas has always definitely backed that, in terms of making sure that we have a police force that is fit to serve, whether it be uniforms, as you mentioned, or phones or laptops, so that we can get that. And that's part of something that's included in the transformation budget. But it's also sorry, can you? No,
I was just going to say, I mean, just on the body armour, I think there's been in excess of 7,000 new body armour issued since New Met for London came in. I think there's been about 17,000. Sorry, apologies. So I was going to say, I think there's been in excess of 7,000 new body armour kits which have been issued since New Met for London came in. I think it's around 17,000 new jackets in order to better equip frontline officers. So this is something that the Met has been taking seriously because of the concerns that have been raised.
Okay, that's alongside a £6 million reduction in uniform procurement. I think one of the things that I've been working on recently is the concerns female officers have on returning from maternity leave. And I think one of the most poignant statements around that was a female officer who said that poorly fitting body armour caused a case of mastitis because the body armour was not fitted to the female form. It had to sit snugly at the bottom and was very tight at the top. She said, I still continue to breastfeed my child, so I continue to run the risk of reoccurrence, but I refuse to let my child be affected. However, it could affect my role at work. These issues still persist. Deputy Mayor, would you support maternity kit days being introduced to ensure that female officers returning to work have the correct kit that supports them, both at home and at work?
I mean, short answer is yes, let's take that away and look at it. I mean, this is definitely something that we've been recognising through our work on fixing the foundations, whether it be in terms of the estate, making sure that we have changing rooms for female officers. Something that came up in the firearms work that we've done was the how to make sure that female firearms officers feel confident in returning to work after maternity, given the equipment and fitness levels needed. But also, we need to make sure that in everything we're doing, we're making sure that all police officers feel confident in serving. So I agree.
Thank you, and thank you for keeping that short. We've still got 2 more sections on a new map for London, so we really need to pick up speed, please. The next one is putting crime fighting first, and it's started with Assemblymember Harani.
Thank you, Chair. So last night we had the sort of starting evening of Champions League football with 3 London clubs actually participating this year, but then the part of the world that I represent in London has Wembley Stadium, so we've had a summer of concerts with Oasis and the likes of Coldplay performing there, and all sorts of major concerts and events at other stadiums and venues in London. So, Deputy Mayor, how are you supporting the Met to ensure that the policing costs for this, because this has knock-on impact in terms of the police operations and police resources that are needed, how are you ensuring that they're covered by the creator of the costs?
Thank you. I think you make a really important point, and especially when we're seeing such important cultural and sporting events in London. This is something that the Mayor and myself have been passionate about for some time, and it's important to recognise that given the amount of high football fixtures at the MPS, we have over 1,000 officers dedicated to policing football, which equates to 750,000 cost per day. So it's significant amounts of money. It's also sad. It's important to recognise that we receive from government the NIC that I mentioned previously, but this isn't enough. The cost recovery is dictated by the Special Police Services guidelines under Section 25 of the Police Act 1996, and they have been codified in the costs that can only be recovered from private land. And I make that point because that's really important, because that's within stadiums, not outside stadiums, where obviously policing issues can happen. But this is something that is annually reviewed, and I want to give the assurance to the committee that we always go for the top amount of that. There's banding, and we always push for the top amount on that and sign off that because of the volume of Met. But we're also pushing for national changes on that, because not only on a realistic funding based on the level of activity, but also, as I said, on regulations of where that funding can be applied.
Okay, so would you say at the moment, in terms of your ask compared to your costs, where do we stand on that? So is it a significant difference that you're experiencing in terms of the cost of the policing operations?
Yeah. I mean, it is a significant difference, and that does relate to the ability to recover from private versus public land, which is to do with the need for reform of Section 25 of the Police Act 1996 to deal with the case law, which actually clarified or set the expectations around how that law had to be interpreted, and that's why there is that shortfall. It's been a long-standing issue. It is something which I know from my time in the Home Office, not just the Met, but many police forces feel quite strongly about, and I do think it is something which would be sensible for the government to have a proper look at.
Okay, and is there active lobbying work happening to...
We've had various conversations, yes.
Okay, great. Kenny, just so in terms of the Met's use of, I mean, we've spoken a lot about live facial recognition, but in terms of other automation or AI technologies that the Met is using, can you give us a flavour of what's being used at the moment?
So they're having a look, for example, at when you take, to make a statement, when they take the statement, they'll still need to sign it off, but can they use Copilot or AI to put that into a form which actually works? Can they use that to do redactions ahead of having to provide stuff to the CPS or when they're looking at body-worn video? So there's quite a lot. They also, you'll have seen, they have sort of, I think it's a commercial notice out at the moment for, is it about 25 million or 20 million, I can't remember off the top of my head, on data and digital and change, and that is something they're looking at. And again, that fits in with their wider sort of AI and AI safety strategy in that space. So there's a lot of work looking at how this can help to make them more productive.
And what's your assessment on how the Met is making progress in this area?
So I think on things like redactions, there's potentially real progress in that area in terms of also how I think it's right that they've started to look at things like statements where arguably it's slightly less controversial, if I can put it that way, and they'll be able to check that against what a human, in other words, might have written. So I think the Met is where probably we would all want every force and everybody to be further ahead than they are, but I think the Met is taking a sensible approach to going as fast as is sensible in this environment, if I can put it that way.
Okay.
And can I add that the Met are currently developing an AI Centre for Excellent Framework for Responsible AI, as well as an AI strategy, which MOPAC will be consulted on. And also the Mayor's London Policing Ethics Panel is currently working on a project that considers the ethical issues bespoke to London's context that the MPS should consider in assessing new AI tools.
Okay, and what more should it be doing or can it be doing?
I mean, I think that there is, and this is something that we've talked about through the Criminal Justice Board, whether given the, for lack of a better term, bureaucracy in the system, whether there's use for AI there to improve things like case quality, case file quality. I know that the Met currently have a project called Operation Atlas that uses AI to work through the alibis on people's phones in terms of stalking to prove whether what they say is true in context of what the messages say on their phone because of the persistent use. But I think that this they're looking at currently whether this can support rape and sexual RASO cases as well. So I think there's a lot of positive pilots, but there's further that they can go.
Okay, and is there further work that can be done on using AI to analyse crime data better? Just one of the common issues that we, as Assembly members, get reported to us, or I suppose politicians across the board, will be about police presence at certain times, and quite often that's heavily weighted during the daytime, especially with neighbourhood policing. So how can we ensure that data is being used to track where crimes are happening, what types are happening at what locations, and potentially change shift patterns as a result?
So that data is, broadly speaking, available already. If you look at when a large number of robberies or the violent crimes happens, it's generally midweek, between the hours of 3 and 6. What happens then? Schools come out. So can that be sped up? Can AI come into that sort of space? Yes, but I think if you speak to most of the police, they will have good enough data and local intelligence about where and when their crimes are happening that they can do hotspot policing effectively with the right resource.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, and thank you for mentioning the football. It enables me to say well done, Tottenham. Assembly Member Garbett.
Thank you. I just want to go back to some of the policing around football and major concerts. So I just want to ask what the police are doing at a concert. Like, what role are they undertaking? Like, why are they there?
It would be a mix of, obviously, public order, but also if there's any intelligence or concern raised previous to events, but also the sanction and detection of crime. I'm particularly welcome the work that the Metropolitan Police did this summer on London has hosted some major female artists this summer, and they did some particular operations around making sure the prevention and detection of VOG was a key part of the operations they ran around concerts.
Concerts that were of female artists?
Some, because there were some major artists. We've had like Billie Eilish, Sabrina Carpenter, but I think it was a mix.
So they... Okay, I feel like, I mean, I'm quite interested in how they were assessing risk in that scenario. But I just think it's interesting to think about this kind of creator cost concept, and also like who else might be able to provide what the police are providing in that context. Like we've seen success of the more stewards being at Notting Hill Carnival replacing the policing, and obviously at festivals Oxfam do a load of the like crowd control, and and obviously there's a bit of an akin between a concert and a festival. So I'm just wondering if anyone's having a conversation about different models rather than just assuming the police should be doing it and then charging people for it.
Overall, I think that most stadiums do have a mixed ecology of stewards and private security. I know the Arsenal, who also won last night, definitely do. But obviously, it's important in terms of sanction and detection of crime, but also sense of safety that there are arresting officers available.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I mean, the Met policing plan for any individual concert will be a proportionate one based on whether they've got any intelligence that anything's likely to happen at it. They will, wherever you get large numbers of people coming together, you're always going to require, to an extent, a police presence. That isn't just in terms of actually going out and nicking people. That's also the first duty of police is crime prevention, in a way. So they have that. And then at many of these concerts have actually done outreach work to try and build trust and confidence amongst people. So they've had stalls and they've engaged with not just young females, but men and women, boys and girls of all ages, in order to pass on information about reporting, about how to keep themselves safe, about what's going on, and build that trust and confidence. And I think that's a very positive thing.
Yeah, but I think there's just lots of ways of rethinking if it needs to be the police officers. If they're saying that this is a drain on their resources, because it says in Mark Rowley's letter about the summer that some of this was really draining, and they had to abstract people. But I think then it's, can we look at who's delivering it, what they're doing? Because what you've just described there, loads of voluntary sector organisations could do that. Loads of voluntary sector organisations who lead on violence against women and girls and kind of know your rights. So I just think it's, rather than just thinking the police have to do it, I think it's another example of where, instead of just saying they need more money, we need to look at if other people could do it. Because I think if we go down a slippery slope of creator costs, we might end up, and I don't support this, but just, in a state where a high street has to pay for their policing because of the high amount of kind of shoplifting and theft that happens on a high street. And I just think we need to be careful about what theory we're using, and rather than just probing what the police are doing.
So I don't think that's certainly not what I'm trying to suggest here. I think what I'm trying to suggest are instances which fall under potentially Section 25 of the Police Act 1996, are things which should be looked at. If there are things where the police don't need to do it and other people do need to do it, then that's fine. But I do think engagement for the purpose of driving up trust and confidence in the Met can only really be done by the Met. I do think crime prevention and all of those things, that they're always going to require a proportionate police presence. And I don't think that the principle that the Commissioner set out, that where those burdens which could potentially fall under Section 25 should be met by the organisers, where it is a special policing service, I don't think that's an unreasonable starting point for them to come at it from.
Okay. Thank you. Yeah, and West Ham have been very, very good. I must say that. We must start mentioning these. Assembly Member Lord Bailey.
Deputy Mayor, just to present attention to you, you rightly said that when it comes to creator cost and who pays that cost, that it applies mainly to private to private land, as it were, football pitches, stadiums, etc. But is there a risk that if we go this way, big events like the Notting Hill Carnival, which costs significantly more than any football match, will they start to come into the purview of the idea that if you create a cost, you have to somehow help meet it?
Yeah, and I recognise that point in Assembly Member Garbutt's question as well. And I do think we need to, as organisations, think about what is a fair allocation of fees and costs, and based on as in all organisations, what is a private event, what is the income of that company versus, a community event, and have an approach that, recognises social value of those events too. So I think that, Kenny and I aren't suggesting that, if you create it, you pay for it, because, we have huge charitable events like the London Marathon every year. We wouldn't want to go down that route, but, it all costs. And I think, one of the figures that really struck me is at the moment it's around 19 million, and the cost directly is 5 million being recovered from football stadiums. So I agree that there should be a proportionate and nuanced response, but I do think, given the scale, that something needs to change.
That's a fair response. I'll just say two things the Mayor needs to take into account when he's making this information. Of course, football fans are also taxpayers, so they have paid in slightly to what's going on there. And when you talk about social value, we have to be careful, because that's always subjective. I am not a football fan. I couldn't tell you when the last time West Ham did anything. I'm not interested. But the point is, I absolutely respect the great social capital that football is to this country. So the Mayor needs to take those things, and you do, into account before we just say, because they are commercial companies, they should pay up. Because that's not correct in my mind.
Absolutely. And I mean, me and the Mayor are football fans, and we recognise and work with a lot of football organisations in a lot of the charitable space as well. However, and, as a football fan who recognise that games can be highly expensive already to attend, we do also recognise the amount of money in the system, and I think the point is that proportionate to what we're seeing currently on?
Okay. Thank you, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. We're now moving on to the last section of this, and it's working in partnership. Assembly Member Duval.
Thank you. Are there any specific areas where you believe the Met could collaborate with its partners more efficiently? And if I can give you an example, I think in new Met for London 2, you state that the Met will work with MOPAC and the Victims Commissioner to expedite outcomes in courts. How will this be done?
Thank you. Yes, I mean, in the police and crime plan, but also in the new Met for London plan, it recognises at the moment a real need for greater partnership and collaboration across the criminal justice system. We have significant backlogs and delays, and the work of Claire Waxman, the Independent Victim Commissioner, very recently on victim attrition from the system, has very stark data and a real need for us as a system to change, and that's something that we spoke about this week in the London criminal justice system. We recognise that the government is doing a huge amount of review into the work of the criminal justice system, including the Gawk Review and the Leveson Review. However, when cases are being heard in 2029 for victims, that is something that needs significant change. And I mentioned previously in previous answer, it's things like case file quality, it's things like information sharing, it's things that we discuss in terms of the Criminal Justice Board, is how do we have greater connectivity across those systems. So that's something that I think that, we can't wait for the Leveson Review to change. We need to make sure we're gripping now, as well as making suggestions around how the Sentencing Review and others might help improve that system.
And other areas, other than the criminal justice system, where would you...
Yeah, I mean...
Other specific areas where you think we could aim for improvement?
Yeah, I think that through the work that I've been doing, I would also note local authorities. Once again, I think hearing directly from local authorities, data sharing is being an issue, and that needs to be resolved. I think as well, especially as a lot of the vulnerable people, we see both victims and perpetrators in the system are being looked at the same agency, and we have some great multi-agency response work, but I think that we could go further and do more. Similarly, I know that there's a lot of work that we have started with certain sectors, for example, the retail sector, the hospitality sector, the employment sector, that we want to do more with together, and goes to the point the Assembly member, I think it was Edwards made, Small Edwards made earlier, about, you know, the the resources that some areas have in terms of private security, CCTV. These are the things that we need to look at how we can collaborate more on.
Chair, I think my second question's been answered, so let's move on. Thank you.
Thanks. Assembly Member Roberts for a quick question.
Absolutely. What's needed to improve information sharing across partnerships, and how can MOPAC support this?
So I think, in all honesty, a dare to share approach from both, as Lord Harris has set out in previous things to do with counter-terrorism, as various other... I think both the Met and local authorities are sometimes a little bit reticent because of the data. I mean, if they just called it the Data Sharing Act rather than the Data Protection Act, perhaps would be in a different place on this. But I think that happens. We, as MOPAC, have been facilitating workshops with the Met and local authorities, particularly London Heads of Community Service, to try and bring this to life. We are also looking at what, and the Met make a lot of data available on their safe stats data, but it's about the processing power and the ability then of the people to access it. There's no point in it just being made available if people can't get into it. So those are some of the sort of practical steps we're taking, and we pay for somebody in London through London councils who actually helps facilitate data sharing agreements and such between the Met and those local authorities.
Okay, thank you. One key partner in every London borough is the Safer Neighbourhoods Board, and we've heard before at this committee that some of them work very well and some of them are in dire need of improvement. And I understand that there is a piece of work either ongoing or scheduled to start. I wonder if you could give me an update, Deputy Mayor, on that particular piece of work so that we can all have Safer Neighbourhood Boards which are fit for purpose.
Thank you. Yes, and I recognise your assessment of the picture currently. We have a structure at the moment of ward panels, safer neighbourhood partnership boards and other arrangements that were meant to ensure that there's community influence, scrutiny and partnership working. And as you rightly know, there's inconsistency of a great scale across London in this, and in order to engender greater community confidence and actual improvements in safety, that needs to be improved. So the MOPAC's community engagement team, that's part of the work that they're doing in terms of the rolling out of this community scrutiny panels at the moment, is not evaluating, but looking through all of the current arrangements, what's working, what's not, and how to get greater consistency. I believe DAC Louise Puddiford is working with us on that to make sure, because obviously the Met currently lead on those arrangements, so we're working with them to make sure it's improved.
And if I may, what time scale are we putting on this? Because not only do they share information, not only do they bring people together, they are also responsible for, in some cases, disbursement of large sums of public money through the Safe Neighbourhood Boards. And if we have ones which are not fit for purpose, without due scrutiny, without proper processes, then there is obviously a financial element here which could, and I stress could, be open to abuse.
So if I maybe step in here, because actually we are due to meet the Deputy Mayor to take her through this tomorrow in more detail, because we had the first of the joint programme board, because the CSTP is now set up, the Community Scrutiny Transformation Programme is now set up between us and the Met. DAC Puddifoot will be the lead on their side. She only just took up her role on the 1st of September, so I spoke to her yesterday and we're going to be catching up on this next week. I would hope by the end of this calendar year we will have a proper target operating model and be able to say a lot more publicly about what's happening in that regard.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. And that concludes all our questions on a new Met for London. We're now going on to the Notting Hill Carnival. If I can ask you to be as brief in the answers as well as the questions.
Thank you, Chair. My question is to the Deputy Mayor and just asking for your reflections on the policing of this year's Notting Hill Carnival.
Thank you. I'm conscious of time, Chair, and I know that some of the information I've previously given on this, but I think I would assess it in two ways. Through greater partnership and investment, there's been vast improvement in the safety concerns that we had going into last year around the Carnival. And also, I think the police and the community partnership trust and City Hall and local authorities have worked well to assess those issues and come up with solutions for them. However, there continues to be significant financial constraints on, and we've discussed the scale of the Carnival already in this committee today, on the ability to ensure safety in that, and that's something that has been reviewed, and the second phase of that review is happening now, post-Carnival. The Commissioner spoke yesterday very positively about the improvements on stewarding, the sense within the Carnival on the ground of a heightened sense of safety there. I think a lot of the work pre-Carnival to get messages out in the community about having a knife-free Carnival, having a safe Carnival. I saw myself on social media really cutting through, and I've similarly, the feedback post-Carnival was that there was positive engagement with the Metropolitan Police. So that's really good and important. However, there's still not enough funding. The funding that we were able to put in later than we wanted to, given that our asks from government didn't come through, are still concerning, because in able to do what we want to do, which is to put Carnival on a sustainable footing, we need to have ongoing funding in this area, and we're talking currently within the partnership about how to move forward on that. And I'll stop there, but there's also the issue of continued issues with the volume of people as well.
Yeah, I think on the funding point, other Assembly members will be coming in later regarding that. Just specifically on serious violence, we saw a reduction in serious violence at this year's Carnival. Is there anything in specificity that you'd attribute that to, that reduction in serious violence this year compared to previous years?
Yeah, I mean, as previously mentioned, there was 167 arrests for drug offences, 50 for the possessions of offensive weapons. And I note those things because the Commissioner spoke yesterday about the importance of the operation in terms of preventing and stopping violence occurring before the Carnival. And also we've already discussed the use of LFR at 2 points in the perimeter of Carnival. So I think it was... Is it really gone? I'm sorry.
Have you got your phone very near it?
No, it's there.
How odd.
I can move it further away.
Thank
Is that
you.
better? So I think it's that proactive engagement with the partnership, but also the Metropolitan Police work to kind of ensure preventative work happened that has led to the safest Carnival this year. So.
And just on the live facial recognition, obviously we had a discussion earlier about that. But do you think the Met was correct to use it at the entrances and exits of the Carnival this year? And were there any incidents of misidentification of the technology at the event?
So the LFR helped officers to identify almost 100 people of interest over 2 days. The Metropolitan Police believe without it, it would not have been able to have done that because of the amount of people in the crowd. Obviously, the whole point of LFR is it can scan a huge amount of people. That led to 97 alerts with 61 arrests. I think it's also important to make it clear that the use of LFR has officer engagement and checks and balances on the ground. So there hasn't been any reports of misidentification. This is something that we continue to push, and something I know the previous iteration of use of LFR at Carnival was a significant concern and issue, and since then the pixel rate of accuracy has been improved, and I haven't heard anything about that this year.
Thank you very much, Deputy Mayor. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. I would say one of the reasons that it was not really bad this year is the fact that 11 firearms were seized by the police before it. 11 firearms, and we talked about it earlier that gun crime is up. I mean, that could have helped to the fact that there weren't any murders there. I find it very peculiar that we say, oh, it was a good carnival because nobody was killed. I mean, 5 people were stabbed, police officers were injured, including broken nose and lots of other things. And we think this is a good result. And yet lots of people think that 150,000 people going in London waving their flags is a total disaster. When you look at the crimes that are carried out at this carnival, I'm shocked that people think, oh, that's great, it was much better. It was only better because people weren't murdered. I mean, it astonishes me that this is okay, which of course it's not, but then other things that don't, I mean, police officers being injured anywhere is wrong. Let's get that straight. But the fact that nobody was killed was looked upon as a benefit, as that's a good carnival.
I mean, as previously mentioned, I completely agree with you on the point about officers being assaulted. That can never be accepted. However, I think Assembly Member Small Edwards mentioned previously the scale of the amount of people that Carnival attracts. It's over 2 million people. We've gone through the arguments about comparing it to protests. It's a very different thing. And it's really such a significantly positive event in London that celebrates the rich heritage of the Afro-Caribbean community. As I've previously mentioned, it's the second largest carnival outside of Rio, and this is why, you know, we've asked for national support on it because of its national significance. I think we all would stand by that we want the safest carnival in London possible, and the review that we're doing obviously will be looked at in terms of what more can be done. I think that, you know, when you talk about, you know, someone not dying, if you talk to the family of the bereaved people who have lost people at Carnival, that is really important and significant that we haven't lost anyone this year.
Yeah, you're kind of underlying my point. The fact that the fact that we're talking about murders on something that, and I'll quote him, the very best of London, says our wonderful mayor, the very best of London. Do you think it's the very best of London when there were 528 arrests, 11 firearms had to be removed from people that they had intelligence were going to the actual carnival? You know, I mean, the list goes on. Lots of police officers, 55 were assaulted. How can we say that that is the very best of London? How can we say that?
Well, I think we can say it because it is a hugely important cultural event that has been running since the 60s, that celebrates Afro-Caribbean culture. It celebrates music and culture and diversity in our great city, which is something that I treasure. and this is significantly important. And the work that the Metropolitan Police have done to ensure that the millions of people who go there can go there and feel confident that we're working as hard as we can to keep them safe is really important. I think it's important that on a bank holiday weekend, when people want to enjoy themselves, they can do that, you know, and have the confidence in the Metropolitan Police that they are there to ensure their safety.
How much did it cost the Metropolitan Police this year? Well, you must have a ballpark figure, because we're talking millions and millions. How much?
I don't know. I'm sorry, I don't have. Do you have a...
I mean, so you don't know how much it costs? We're running out of money. We've got no money for front counters. That's £7 million. We've got no money for officers in the parks. We've got no money for horse units and dog units. We've got no money for the fraud squad. It goes on and on and on. And you don't know how much this has cost, because it will be way over £10 million.
I mean, I have recognised repeatedly in my questions, in my answers to questions, the significant amount of costs associated with policing Carnival, and that's why we've written to government to ask the mayor and the local authority stepped in this year to fund the safety measures in relation to Carnival, and that improves things. But I also think that we need, given its national significance, to ensure that we get the funding that's needed to make it even safer.
But already the mayor is putting in £2 million. Kensington and Chelsea put in, and that doesn't count for the amount of money that it is costing us to police. And I've just gone through a list of things that we're having to lose, all of us having to lose, because there isn't enough money in the Metropolitan Police. Now, given that, is that money well spent?
I mean, I think this goes to my previous point on the NIC, the pressures that we see as a capital city, whether it be additional protests, whether it be additional national events, whether it be state visits, are all putting additional pressure on the capital city. And the government needs to make sure through the national and international capital city grant.
All right, then let me put this to you then.
Properly.
Let me put this to you. If you were to ask Londoners, would they like their front counters left open, or would they like 2 days of police officers getting assorted and doing their level best to keep a carnival open? Do you think they'd say, oh no, let's have the carnival left open, we'll give up our front counters? Do you think Assembly Member Roberts would be happy to have his police back in the parks, because lots of other councillors absolutely would, or to see the police unit, but the dog unit being kept open, or the horse units fully staffed? Do you not think that the public would say, I would rather that sort of money was put into doing policing through the whole year?
I recognise the significant amounts of pressure that the Metropolitan Police face in terms of its budget constraints. I mean, the decisions that they're taking through front counters are obviously because of those constraints, but also because of the changing demand in policing. And we've discussed the evidence base around front counters in that regard. I do think that, you know, Notting Hill Carnival has been something that has been happening since the 60s. It is something that is grassroots, led by the community, for the community, and would happen anyway. We have to work with the community to make sure it's as safe as possible, because that is our priority across London and always.
So your priority is to put money into a 2-day event while we go without our front counters, while we go without our mounted police service in many places, while we go without officers that we desperately need. We've heard that we're going to lose 3,300 officers because the Metropolitan Police has no money. But there's a cultural event that shows the very best of London, and therefore that is a better place for the money to go.
I'll reiterate my priority is our priority, the Mayor's and mine, is to keep London safe. And that is all year round, every day. That is why we've prioritised through our funding and allocated additional funding to neighbourhood policing, to high volume crime, to public protection, because that's what London says matters to them. It is also important that it's significant cultural events. We show the best of our capital and keep people safe in those events too.
Well, we didn't manage to keep police officers safe, did we? Because 55 of them were injured.
Just to give you
I'm
a figure,
hoping,
Chairman, it's,
you have to be very quick because I'm closing
it will
now.
be, I promise. So in 2024, I don't have the figures for 2025, but including opportunity costs, I just looked up, it's £13.5 million.
Yeah,
I don't have the figures for 2025.
13.5 million, and it'll be a lot more this year. We all know that. Because if nothing else, the cost of policing has gone up, because national insurance has gone up, and is costing the Metropolitan Police Service alone £60 million extra a year. So we can look at a very enhanced figure on that. I'm hoping that the Chair will come back to this, because I'm sure other colleagues of mine have got things to say on this, but I promised we'd be finished by 1, and I will keep to that. We are not going to be asking the last set of questions, which is the Met Summer Policing Plans, but we will send you the questions, if that's all right, if we can have written answers. And some of my colleagues have got additional questions, so I'll get those sent to you. If we could have a speedy response, I'd be grateful. If not, we'll be going on till at least 1:30, and I'm sure you'd be happier to put it in writing. That then brings us to the end of this meeting. Sorry? Oh, you were, and that's a mistake of mine. Can I ask you then to, I apologise, can you be very quick? And I'll be asking the Chair to come back to this because I know other colleagues will as well.
Thank you. Just a quick question. We're all aware that the Labour government is conducting the Fair Funding Review 2.0 for local authorities. Two of the hardest hit local authorities in London will be Kensington and Chelsea and Westminster. Given that they're going to have their funding dramatically cut by the government if this goes ahead, how will they be able to fund their contribution to Carnival next year and in years going forwards? And if not, where will the money come from?
Yeah, I think that's a very astute question, Assembly Member Roberts, and that's something that the Mayor is talking directly to government about the fair funding review, because obviously the precept also affects the mayoral funding and its ability to fund the police. So this is something that is an ongoing and significant part of our conversations with government. And I recognise that the two local authorities this year stepped in and provided additional funding. I recognise, as I'm sure we all do, that local authorities are been hugely overstretched for years, and increasingly so in London, and that is why I go back to my point about, you know, this burden cannot fall on local authorities and the mayor alone. It needs to be picked up by government and other players, because the Carnival is a grassroots thing that will happen, and we need to make sure it's supported and safe.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Assembly Member Garbutt.
Just two very quick questions, because I'm going to ask for them in writing, I think. So I think you alluded to this at the beginning, but the Carnival obviously did a respect campaign all, you know, ahead of the Carnival, which seems to be missing from the Met Commissioner's analysis of Notting Hill, which I think is quite unhelpful. But it'd be really good to understand the impacts of that, but maybe we could have that in writing, because I know that's a new thing that they did that we were told about in our briefing.
Yeah, I'm happy to provide more details, but that is exactly what I meant at the beginning when I talked about their social media campaign and community engagement about working together to provide the safest carnival.
Yeah, I think we really shouldn't lose that from the narrative, because yes, the police did things differently, but the Carnival also did that campaign. And also, obviously, 70 of the arrests were due to cannabis possession, and obviously the Mayor backed a report earlier this year to decriminalise the use of cannabis. So I'm wondering if you're doing any analysis of the policing capacity that went into those arrests and building the case to government about why the decriminalising cannabis is a good thing.
I mean, we've discussed the London Drugs Commission report at this. Lord Faulkner's report on. I'm finishing.
Yeah,
the
it
end
was
of
just
the
specifically
sentence.
on any analysis that's been done on the capacity of policing that was used literally just around cannabis possession, which was backed in a report a few months ago.
I can ask, but you have to realise. I think part of the picture will be they'll stop them for several issues.
Yeah, we wouldn't generally look at one event and try and look at what resource was used, if you were going to look at something like that and try to make a case, you would tend to look over a longer.
Okay, it was more to the Deputy Mayor on, we've just been talking about resource money and the kind of perception of Carnival, and I think being really clear that 70 of those arrests were due to cannabis possession, and you're trying to build a case towards the government to make that change if you back a report that's got it in it.
I mean, we're working through, the London Drug Forum has set up a task force to work through all of the recommendations. I think that's a slight misconstruction of what we're doing in that case, because that's not the sole conclusion of that recommendation. But I mean, I think we've made the point in relation to Carnival, which is in current standing of the law.
Yeah, just to be fair to the Met, they can only police the law as it is at the moment. So.
Thank you.
Yeah, I wasn't saying that. I was saying looking at the capacity that it's currently taking. Thanks.
Okay, I'd have been disappointed if we hadn't have had a mention of drugs at some point during a.
I want to let you down, Chair.
Thank you. You never do, dear. You never do. Okay, thank you. There's been another couple of questions that I've been asked to ask. We haven't got time for them, but if we put them in writing, is that okay for you to answer? Thank you. Right, okay. I would like to thank our guests for attending this morning and for their answers to our questions. Can I ask the committee to note the report and the discussion? And can I ask the committee to note the monthly report from MOPAC? Can we also delegate authority to the chair in consultation with party group lead members to agree any output arising from the meeting? Thank you. Can I ask the committee to note its work programme 25-26? Right, the next meeting of the committee is scheduled to take place on the 16th of October 2025 at 10 a.m. in the Chamber City Hall. I have no urgent business, so that concludes today's meeting. Thank you all.